Welcome, traveler of light. You have come to a place where the world forgets to move. Beneath the mountains of Skyrim, beyond stone and song, there lies a city without sky, a place where time itself has learned to stand still. They call it Blackreach. The Dwemer once walked these halls, their hands shaping metal and magic into one endless thought. They built cities that could breathe, and machines that dreamed for them long after they vanished. Down here, the air hums with memory. Every sound is an echo of an echo, the pulse of creation repeating itself until even silence has rhythm. If you listen closely, you can hear the gears turning somewhere deep in the dark. Not in motion, but remembering motion. Tonight, we walk not through a city of stone, but through a memory that refuses to end. Step quietly. The walls here have heard too much to be disturbed, and the light that guides you is not from the sun, but from time itself, glowing softly in the places where the world forgot to breathe. Welcome to the city beneath time. The descent into darkness. There are places in Skyrim that whisper of ages long forgotten, where the weight of centuries presses against stone walls that have stood since before men walked these frozen lands. And then there are places like Blackreach, where time itself seems to have paused mid-breath, where every echo carries the memory of a civilization that simply ceased to exist. Picture yourself descending through the ruins of Alftand, or Mzinchaleft, or Ralbathar. The journey begins at the surface, perhaps in the frozen wastes near Winterhold, or in the mountains southwest of Dawnstar, or on a peak near Sheerpoint where dragons are known to roost. You stand before an entrance that looks like countless other Dwemer ruins scattered across Skyrim, ancient stonework partially buried by snow and time, bronze doors that have weathered millennia without losing their luster. But there's something different about these particular ruins, something that sets them apart from the dozens of other Dwemer sites you might have explored. These aren't just ancient cities or research outposts or mining operations. These are gateways, thresholds between the world you know and a world that exists in myth and legend. These are the entrances to Blackreach. The descent begins gradually. The upper levels of these ruins feel familiar if you've explored Dwemer sites before. There are the characteristic brass pipes running along walls and ceilings, their purpose unclear, but their construction still flawless. There are the pressure plates and tripwires that trigger ancient traps, dart launchers and blade traps and falling boulders, all still functional after thousands of years. There are the scattered remains of previous explorers who weren't quite careful enough, their bones picked clean by time or by the things that live in the darkness. The air grows colder as you go deeper, but it's not the cold of winter. It's the cold of earth, of stone that has never known sunlight, of air that has been trapped beneath the surface for ages. You can taste metal on your tongue, copper and iron and something else. Something that might be the flavor of time itself. And underlying everything is that mechanical hum, the sound of Dwemer machinery continuing its endless tasks. Steam hisses from pipes that have been functioning for thousands of years, condensing into clouds that drift through corridors lit by crystalline lights that glow with no visible power source. You begin to encounter the Guardians, Dwemer automatons that patrol these halls with mechanical precision. Dwarven spiders skitter across walls and ceilings, their bladed legs clicking against stone. Dwarven spheres roll through passages, unfolding into combat forms when they detect intruders. And in the deepest sections, you might face a Dwarven centurion, those massive war machines with their steam-powered hammers that can crush a man in full armor with a single blow. But the automatons aren't the only inhabitants of these depths. As you descend further, you begin to see signs of the Falmer. Crude totems made from bones and chorus chitin. The distinctive smell that accompanies their presence, a mixture of decay and something sharply organic. The sound of their movements in adjacent passages, that distinctive shuffling gait as they feel their way through darkness. And then you encounter them directly, these blind, hunched creatures that were once the proud snow elves, now reduced to savage shadows of their former glory. The Falmer are dangerous in ways the automatons aren't. The machines are predictable, following program patterns and responses. But the Falmer are unpredictable, driven by instinct and rage, coordinating their attacks in ways that suggest more intelligence than most give them credit for. They emerge from side passages, drop from ledges above, ambush you from behind. And they're accompanied by their chorus, those massive insect-like creatures with venomous bites and armored carapaces. You fight your way deeper, through corridors that twist and branch, through chambers that might have been living quarters or workshops or storage areas. You navigate past Dwemer machinery that still operates, gears the size of cartwheels turning with ponderous inevitability, pistons pumping with rhythmic precision. You cross bridges over chasms that drop into darkness, the sound of water echoing from far below. You dodge traps and solve puzzles, manipulating valves and levers to open sealed doors or extend retractable bridges, and all the while, you're aware that you're going down, not just physically descending, though you certainly are, but descending into history, into a past that most of Skyrim has forgotten or never knew. Every level you pass through is like peeling back another layer of time. The upper levels might have been occupied or explored relatively recently, evidenced by the fresher bones and more recent graffiti scratched into walls. But the deeper you go, the more pristine everything becomes, the more it feels like you're the first person to set foot here in centuries or even millennia. Eventually, after hours of exploration and combat, after solving the puzzles and overcoming the guardians, you reach a chamber different from all the others. It's larger, more ornate, with intricate mechanisms built into its walls. At its center is a pedestal designed to hold something spherical. And if you've been following the main quest, if you've spoken to Septimus Cygnus and received his attunement sphere, you know what to do. You place the sphere in its receptacle. The mechanism activates immediately, ancient gears engaging with a sound like distant thunder. The sphere begins to glow, pulsing with a light that seems to come from within its crystalline structure. Tonal frequencies resonate through the chamber, sounds at the edge of hearing that you feel more than hear, vibrations that seem to reach into your chest and resonate with your heartbeat. Stone grinds against stone with a sound like the earth groaning in its sleep. The floor around the pedestal begins to move, rotating sections shifting and rearranging themselves. What appeared to be solid floor reveals itself to be an elaborate puzzle, pieces sliding into new configurations. And where there was only stone before, a staircase begins to emerge, spiraling downward into depths that were hidden, protected, waiting for someone with the proper key to reveal them. The staircase is narrow, carved directly from living rock, descending in a tight spiral that seems to go on forever. The walls are smooth, almost glassy, showing marks that suggest they were shaped by tonal architecture rather than physical tools. Strange symbols are carved at intervals along the descent, Dwemer script that glows faintly in the darkness, perhaps marking depth or distance, or serving some other purpose that only their creators understood. As you descend this final staircase, the quality of the air changes. It becomes fresher somehow, less stale, as if there's air circulation from some source below. You can hear water, not the dripping or trickling you heard in the tunnels above, but the sound of a substantial river, flowing water that suggests open space. And there's light, faint at first but growing stronger as you descend, a blue-green glow that doesn't come from any Dwemer mechanism. Finally, you reach the bottom of the staircase. Before you is a massive door, bronze like all Dwemer doors, but larger than any you've seen before. It's inscribed with more of that flowing script, words that might be a warning or a welcome, or simply a statement of what lies beyond. The door is already open, or perhaps it opens automatically as you approach, swinging inward on hinges that should be frozen with age but move with perfect, silent precision. And you step through the threshold into Blackreach. The first thing that strikes you is the scale. This isn't just a cave, or even a series of caves. This is an entire world buried beneath the surface of Skyrim, a cavern so vast that its ceiling disappears into a haze of blue bioluminescence. Giant mushrooms tower above you, their caps glowing with an otherworldly light that seems to pulse with a rhythm all its own. Massive stalactites hang from above like the teeth of some primordial beast, and far in the distance you can see the ruins of what was once a city. Its Dwemer architecture still gleaming with that characteristic bronze-gold sheen even after all these centuries. The silence here is profound, but it's not the silence of emptiness. It's the silence of something waiting, watching, remembering. You can hear water flowing somewhere in the depths, the distant clatter of machinery. And if you listen very carefully, you might hear the faint chiming of crimson nirnroot, that rare plant that grows nowhere else in all of Tamriel. Let's pause here for a moment and really absorb what you're seeing. Your eyes, adjusted to the darkness of the tunnels and passages you just traversed, are suddenly confronted with a space so large that your mind struggles to process it. The cavern stretches out in every direction, its boundaries lost in distance and the ethereal glow of bioluminescent life. If you were to stand in the center of Whiterun's marketplace and look around, you might see the entire city spread before you. Blackreach is easily 20 times that size, possibly more. Some scholars have estimated that the cavern extends beneath multiple holds of Skyrim, possibly beneath the Pale, Winterhold, Hjalmarch, Hofengar, and the Reach all at once. The ceiling is perhaps the most disorienting feature. When you first enter, it's not the rough, natural rock face you might expect in a cave. Instead, it's covered in some kind of growth, possibly algae or lichen, that glows with a soft blue light. Oh, see, this creates the illusion of a sky, an alien sky certainly, but a sky nonetheless. The effect is that even though you're hundreds of feet underground, perhaps thousands of feet depending on where you entered, your brain tries to tell you that you're outside, under an open sky. This cognitive dissonance, this struggle between what your eyes see and what your mind knows to be true, is part of what makes Blackreach so unsettling. It doesn't feel like a cave. It doesn't feel like a building. It feels like another world entirely, a place that operates under different rules, where up and down and inside and outside lose their normal meaning. The giant mushrooms are the next thing that captures your attention. These aren't the mushrooms you might find growing in the forests of Falkreath or along the shores of Lake Ilinalta. Those are measured in inches or at most a foot or two in height. The mushrooms in Blackreach are measured in stories. The largest ones have caps that could serve as roofs for substantial buildings supported by stalks as thick around as ancient pines. Their glow isn't uniform either. It pulses and shifts, sometimes brighter, sometimes dimmer, creating a rhythm that almost feels like breathing. Walk up to one of these giant mushrooms, place your hand on its stalk, and you can feel the texture. It's not quite like bark, not quite like flesh, but something in between. It's slightly warm to the touch, warmer than the surrounding air, suggesting that some kind of biological process is generating heat along with light. The surface has a slight give to it, not soft exactly, but not rigid like wood. And if you listen carefully, you might hear a faint humming or buzzing, possibly the sound of whatever metabolic process allows these organisms to function. The smaller mushrooms, and by smaller we mean ones that are only human height or slightly taller, grow in clusters throughout Blackreach. They create groves, forests of fungi that glow in various shades of blue and green. Walking through these groves is like walking through a dream, the light filtering through the caps above, the silence broken only by the sound of your own footsteps and breathing. The Falmer navigate these groves with ease, despite their blindness, likely using the heat and the acoustic properties to map their surroundings. Between the mushrooms, other plants grow. There are vines, some hanging down from the ceiling in great twisted ropes, others climbing up the stalks of the giant mushrooms. Many of these vines glow as well, with a white or pale yellow light that complements the blue-green of the mushrooms. Some sections of Blackreach have so much of this growth that they're almost bright, not daylight certainly, but bright enough to see clearly without needing a torch or magical light. The water is everywhere in Blackreach, not flooding everything, but present in streams and rivers and pools that are scattered throughout the cavern. The largest waterway cuts through the cavern like a main artery, substantial enough that you'd need a boat to cross it in some places. The sound of this river is constant, a low roar that provides a kind of auditory baseline for the entire cavern. Other sounds layer on top of it: the drip of water from stalactites, the rush of smaller streams, the splash of waterfalls where the river descends from one level to another. But the water here looks wrong. If you've spent time in caves before, you might expect the water to be clear, filtered through limestone and granite until it's pure enough to drink. The water in Blackreach is opaque, colored a peculiar teal green that makes it impossible to see what lies beneath the surface. Dip your hand in and the water feels normal, cold and wet, but its appearance is unsettling. Is it safe to drink? Does the color come from minerals dissolved in the water, or from some kind of microorganism, or from something else entirely? The teal haze that fills much of Blackreach contributes to this sense of otherworldliness. It's not quite fog, not quite dust, but something in between. When you look into the distance, objects become indistinct, blurred by this haze until they fade into darkness or the blue glow of the ceiling. It's as if the air itself is thick with something, possibly spores from the mushrooms, possibly moisture from the river, possibly both. This haze makes it difficult to judge distances. That cluster of mushrooms that looks about 100 yards away might actually be twice that distance. That Dwemer structure on the horizon could be much closer or much further than it appears. The ground beneath your feet varies wildly. In some areas, it's smooth stone, possibly natural cave floor, possibly shaped by Dwemer tools. In other areas, it's rough and uneven, forcing you to watch your step carefully to avoid twisting an ankle. There are sections where the Dwemer built proper roads, paved surfaces that are still largely intact, making travel much easier. And there are areas where the ground is covered in a kind of moss or lichen that glows faintly, creating the effect of walking on a carpet of living light. Geode formations jut from the ground at irregular intervals. These aren't small crystals that you might pick up and carry with you. These are massive structures, some as tall as a person, some even larger. They have the characteristic crystalline structure of geodes, with an outer shell of rougher rock and an interior of crystals that catch and reflect what little light penetrates their depths. These are the soul gem deposits that make Blackreach so valuable to enchanters and mages. Mine these with a pickaxe, and you'll extract not iron or gold or ebony, but empty soul gems of various sizes, ready to be filled and used for enchanting. The temperature in Blackreach is remarkably stable. It's cool, certainly cooler than the surface of Skyrim in summer, but it's not the bone-deep cold of a Skyrim winter either. It's the temperature of deep earth, of places insulated from the changing seasons, protected from wind and weather by thousands of feet of rock. This stable temperature is part of what allows the unusual ecology to thrive here. The mushrooms and other plants don't have to deal with frost or heat waves or any of the other challenges that surface plants face. But perhaps the most striking feature, once you've had time to absorb all of these other details, is the sense of depth. Blackreach isn't a flat cave. It has levels, tiers, sections at different heights connected by natural slopes or Dwemer-built ramps and staircases. Look up and you might see bridges crossing empty air, connecting platforms carved from the cavern walls. Look down and you might see the glow of mushrooms far below, marking areas of the cavern that are below your current level. This three-dimensional quality makes navigation challenging. You can see where you want to go, but finding a path that actually gets you there can take time and exploration. And throughout all of this, maintaining that constant background presence is the hum. It's not a single sound, but a complex harmony of mechanical noises. Gears turning, pistons pumping, valves opening and closing, steam hissing through pipes, water flowing through aqueducts, and under it all, that tonal resonance that might be intentional or might be an accidental byproduct of how all these systems interact. The Dwemer built their machines to last, and they're still running, still performing whatever functions they were designed to perform, indifferent to the fact that their creators vanished 3,000 years ago. This is Blackreach. The Dwemer called it Falzardum Din, which scholars have translated as Blackest Kingdom Reaches, though like so much about the Dwemer, the full meaning of that name is lost to us. Some believe it refers to the depths to which the Dwemer delved in their pursuit of knowledge. Others think it describes the darkness that claimed them in the end. But whatever the name truly means, Blackreach stands as perhaps the most spectacular achievement of Dwemer engineering, and simultaneously the tomb of their greatest dreams. To understand Blackreach, we need to understand the people who built it. The Dwemer, often called dwarves by those who came after, though they were no shorter than other elves, were a race of logic and reason taken to its absolute extreme. Where other cultures looked to the gods for answers, the Dwemer looked inward to mathematics, to engineering, to tonal architecture, those strange sciences that could reshape reality itself through sound and precise calculation. They didn't worship deities, they studied them. They didn't pray for divine intervention, they sought to become divine through their own efforts. And in Blackreach, they came perhaps closer to that goal than anywhere else in Skyrim. Tar, the deepest delving, Dwemer engineering and philosophy. The Dwemer of Skyrim were master excavators and engineers. While other races built their cities on the surface, expanding horizontally across the land, the Dwemer preferred to dig down, to carve their settlements into the bones of the earth itself. There was a philosophy to this, beyond mere defensibility or the wealth that could be mined from deep places. The Dwemer believed that truth lay in the fundamental structure of the world, and the deeper one went, the closer one came to understanding that structure. Scholar Thelwy Galein, in her work Dwemer Inquiries Volume 3, noted a fascinating pattern in Dwemer settlements. The archaeological sites in Skyrim, particularly those west of Vivardenfell, were built at significantly greater depths than their eastern counterparts. Galein theorized that the Dwemer had a specific threshold to which they would dig before beginning construction of their vital structures. She called this threshold the geocline, though she admitted it often overlapped with what she termed the deep venue of a colony. The deep venue was the Dwemer's preferred architectural style in Skyrim. It involved building within natural caverns and cave systems, expanding and reinforcing them rather than creating entirely artificial structures. The tunnels and chambers above this threshold, while grand in their architectural style, served more mundane purposes: surplus food storage, warehouses for trade with surface settlements, barracks for topside patrols. But below the geocline, that's where the real work of the Dwemer civilization took place. Blackreach represents the ultimate expression of this deep venue philosophy. It wasn't a single city, but rather a massive underground highway connecting several Dwemer settlements. Alftand, Mazinchaleft, and Raldaptar all had direct access to Blackreach, and through this subterranean network, the Dwemer could move people, goods, and knowledge across vast distances without ever exposing themselves to the harsh Nordic winters or the conflicts that raged on the surface. The cavern itself is a natural formation, but the Dwemer transformed it into something far more. They built roads along its floor, bridges spanning its chasms, and pumping stations to control the flow of water through its depths. They installed their characteristic bronze pipes throughout the cavern, creating complex hydraulic systems that still function today. They carved living spaces directly into the cavern walls and constructed freestanding buildings in the Dwemer style, that angular geometric architecture that favors straight lines and precise angles over curves and organic shapes. This architectural preference wasn't merely aesthetic. The Dwemer favored well-calculated designs based on angled lines because such designs were more reliable, more predictable. Arcs and curves require imprecise calculations. They involve approximations and compromises. But straight lines and right angles could be measured exactly, calculated perfectly. Even in their buildings, the Dwemer sought to impose order on chaos, to create a world that operated according to mathematical principles rather than the whims of nature or gods. And nowhere was this philosophy more evident than in their use of tonal architecture. The Dwemer had discovered that reality itself could be manipulated through precise frequencies and vibrations. They built resonators and mechanisms that could channel these tones, creating effects that seemed like magic to outsiders but were, to the Dwemer, simply another branch of engineering. In Blackreach, you can still hear these tones if you listen carefully. The hum of the machines, the vibration of the pipes, all of it contributing to a harmonic structure that spans the entire cavern. But Blackreach was more than just a transportation hub or an architectural marvel. It was also a research facility, a mining operation, and ultimately the site of one of the most significant discoveries in Dwemer history. The Azure discovery, Aetherium, and its mysteries. Around the year 221 of the First Era, Dwemer miners working in the depths beneath Raldbthar uncovered something extraordinary. In the deepest sections of what would become known as Blackreach, they found deposits of a substance unlike anything they had encountered before. It was a crystal, luminescent blue in color that gave off a powerful magical aura. Even to the Dwemer, who were skeptical of traditional magic, there was no denying the unique properties of this material. They named it Aetherium, possibly deriving the name from Aetherius, the realm of magic and light that exists beyond Mundus, beyond even oblivion. Some scholars have theorized that Aetherium might actually be fragments of Aetherius that somehow found their way to Nirn, similar to the meteoric glass that the ancient Aelids used in their constructions. Whether this theory is true or not, the Dwemer certainly treated Aetherium as something special, something worthy of their most intensive study. But there was a problem. Aetherium, for all its obvious magical properties, was extraordinarily difficult to work with. It was alchemically inert, meaning it wouldn't react with other substances in the ways alchemists normally expected. It was harmonically volatile, which meant it had to be stored outdoors or in specially designed containers because it would resonate with other materials in unpredictable ways. And most frustratingly of all, no conventional process could enchant it, smelt it, mold it, bind it, or even break it. To anyone else, these properties might have been insurmountable obstacles. But to the Dwemer, they were simply challenges to be overcome through application of reason and experimentation. If conventional processes didn't work, then they would invent unconventional ones. And so began one of the most ambitious undertakings in Dwemer history. 4 major Dwemer city-states formed an alliance specifically to research and exploit this Aetherium discovery. Arkenthams, the great research center in the southern reach, took the lead position. It would serve as the primary command center and research facility, coordinating the efforts of all 4 cities. Raldbthar, which was conveniently located directly above Blackreach and the main Aetherium deposits, was assigned to handle the mining operations. The city of Mzulft was designated as a storage site for the Aetherium and related materials. And Ptharzel, known to later scholars as Deepfolk Crossing, played a role that's less clear in historical records, though some believe it served as an experimental facility. The Raldabthar dwarves were particularly innovative in their approach to Aetherium extraction. Early inscriptions suggest they initially experimented with personal extraction tools, handheld devices designed to carefully remove Aetherium from the surrounding rock without damaging the crystals. As their understanding grew, they developed increasingly sophisticated machinery for large-scale extraction, mechanisms that could process vast quantities of rock to locate and retrieve even small deposits of the precious material. The research progressed rapidly. The Dwemer discovered that while Aetherium couldn't be worked through conventional means, it could be embedded in other metals, particularly gold, and the alloy they called dwarven metal. Other materials like malachite, ebony, and sapphire could also be incorporated into Aetherium constructs. But the real breakthrough came when they figured out how to smelt Aetherium under precisely controlled conditions. Deep beneath the settlement of Bethalft in the Rift, the Dwemer constructed the Aetherium Forge. This wasn't just a forge in the traditional sense. It was a sophisticated apparatus that harnessed geothermal energy from deep underground, creating exact temperatures and pressures needed to make Aetherium malleable. The forge allowed the Dwemer to create artifacts of immense power, items imbued with enchantments at the moment of their creation, rather than having enchantments applied afterward. The artifacts produced by the Aetherium Forge were, by all accounts, spectacular. Weapons that could phase their targets in and out of reality, making them ethereal and unable to harm their attackers. Shields that could summon Dwemer constructs to fight alongside their bearers. Staves that could harness the power of the Standing Stones, those ancient monoliths scattered across Skyrim that grant mortals various blessings. Crowns that could amplify the wearer's own abilities to seemingly impossible levels. For a brief period, the Aetherium Alliance represented everything the Dwemer civilization aspired to be. 4 cities working in harmony, pooling their knowledge and resources toward a common goal, achieving breakthroughs that no single city could have managed alone. They were creating wonders, pushing the boundaries of what was possible through the application of logic and engineering. But there was something else they discovered in Blackreach, something darker that would eventually contribute to the Alliance's collapse. Deep within the cavern, they found an artifact known as the Dark Heart, Maitas. Shadows in the Depths, the Dark Heart and Vampire Kingdoms. The history of Blackreach doesn't begin with the Dwemer. Long before the Deep Elves delved into these depths, before their machines hummed through these halls, Blackreach was home to other inhabitants. According to records from the Second Era, sometime between the Merethic Era and the early First Era, the first vampire clans emerged in Tamriel and established kingdoms within Blackreach's depths. One of these clans was the Night Hollow, and they possessed something extraordinary, the Dark Heart. This artifact, believed to be associated with Namira, the Daedric prince known as the Lady of Decay, was described as a piece of the primal void trapped on Nirn. Unlike most vampires who sustained themselves on blood, the Night Hollow clan fed on the power emanating from the Dark Heart. It sustained them, nourished them, but it also changed them in disturbing ways. The Dark Heart had the ability to warp reality around it. It could consume souls, banishing them to a place between worlds, neither here nor there. Those who drew power from it too deeply suffered physical transformations. Their skin took on a deathly gray pallor, their eyes darkened to black, and black ichor wept from them constantly. The artifact grew stronger by consuming souls, creating a terrible feedback loop that threatened to grow out of control. When the Dwemer arrived in Blackreach and established their presence, they inevitably came into conflict with the Night Hollow clan. Ever the scientists, the Dwemer didn't simply try to destroy the Dark Heart or leave it alone. Instead, they stole it from the vampires and began studying it. They created various apparatuses designed to analyze and control its power, attempting to understand the fundamental nature of this piece of the void. The Night Hollow clan, unable to survive. Without the Dark Heart, eventually managed to reclaim it, but by then, the Dwemer had drained much of its power. This conflict between the vampire kingdoms and the Dwemer settlements adds another layer to Blackreach's complex history. The cavern wasn't just a Dwemer construction project, it was a battleground, a place where different philosophies of power and existence clashed in the darkness. The Dwemer's study of the Dark Heart likely influenced their Aetherium research. Both represented fundamental forces, Aetherium possibly connected to the light of Aetherius, the Dark Heart definitely connected to the consuming darkness of the void. Some scholars have speculated that the Dwemer saw these as two sides of the same metaphysical coin, and that understanding both might unlock secrets about the nature of reality itself. This dual research into both the light and the dark, the creation and the destruction, might explain why the Dwemer built such an extensive library in Blackreach. The Library of Arthazan was constructed specifically to share knowledge between the four cities of the Aetherium Alliance. It contained not just information about Aetherium, but also extensive documentation about the Dark Heart, including theories about how it might be used to access the void itself. Some Dwemer theorized that the void was not simply a place of destruction, but rather a fundamental aspect of reality that needed to be understood. They attempted to use Aetherium crystals to create a bridge to the void, to explore this dark realm just as they had explored the physical depths of Nirn. Whether they succeeded or not remains unknown, as the Library of Arthazan was abandoned when the Aetherium Alliance collapsed. And collapse it did, spectacularly and violently. The fracture, the Aetherium Wars. For all their logic and reason, the Dwemer were not immune to the same weaknesses that have plagued every civilization throughout history: pride, ambition, and the hunger for power. The Aetherium Alliance, which had seemed so promising at its inception, lasted barely 3 years before it began to fragment. The problem was simple. The Aetherium Forge could produce artifacts of incredible power, but it could only be operated under very specific conditions in its location beneath Bethalft. This meant that whichever city controlled the forge effectively controlled the most valuable resource in the Dwemer world. Initially, the 4 cities had agreed to share access to the forge, to work together in creating ethereal artifacts. But as the true potential of these artifacts became clear, that spirit of cooperation evaporated like steam in the cold air of Blackreach. Each city-state began to yearn for independent control of the forge. Arkenthams, as the research center, argued that they understood Aetherium better than anyone, and therefore should have primary authority over the forge. Raldbethar, which extracted the raw Aetherium from Blackreach, claimed that, without their mining operations, there would be no Aetherium to work with at all. Mzulft, as the storage facility, held enormous stockpiles of unprocessed Aetherium and used this as leverage in negotiations. And Tharzel, whatever its exact role had been, wanted recognition and authority equal to the other cities. The disagreement started diplomatically, with delegations meeting in the neutral ground of Blackreach's central chambers. But diplomacy quickly gave way to more hostile negotiations. Trade routes were blocked, shipments of Aetherium were redirected or stolen. Guards from different cities clashed in the tunnels of Blackreach, and eventually it erupted into open warfare. The conflict that followed is known to history as the Aetherium Wars, and it raged for decades beneath the surface of Skyrim, completely unknown to the Nords who lived above. This was a full-scale civil war fought entirely underground, in the depths of Blackreach and the connecting tunnels between the Dwemer cities. The Dwemer, with their advanced weapons and sophisticated tactics, threw everything they had at each other in the struggle for control of the Aetherium Forge. Can you imagine what that must have been like? Dwemer centurions, those massive automatons with their steam hammer fists, clashing in the narrow confines of ancient tunnels. Dwarven spheres rolling through the darkness, their blades extended, hunting enemy forces through the glowing mushroom forests of Blackreach. Tonal architects on both sides manipulating reality itself, creating zones where the laws of physics bent and twisted in impossible ways. The air filled with the hiss of steam, the clash of metal on metal, the screams of the dying echoing through caverns that had known only silence before. The war dragged on year after year, with none of the 4 cities managing to gain decisive control of the forge. They all weakened each other, pouring resources and lives into a conflict that had no clear path to victory. Settlements were abandoned as forces were redirected to the war effort. Mining operations slowed or stopped entirely. The sophisticated cooperation that had allowed the Dwemer to thrive gave way to paranoia and suspicion. And while the Dwemer fought each other in the depths, something they hadn't anticipated was happening on the surface. High King Geller of Skyrim, a shrewd and capable leader, noticed that the Dwemer cities had become strangely quiet. The usual trade and diplomatic contact had ceased. When he sent scouts to investigate, they reported that the Dwemer seemed distracted, their defenses not as strong as they had been. Geller saw an opportunity. The Dwemer cities in Skyrim had long been thorns in the side of the Nordic kingdoms. They were powerful, well-defended, and had resisted Nordic expansion for over a century. But now they were weak, their attention focused inward on their civil war. In what must have seemed like a stunning military achievement, Geller conquered the Dwemer city-states of Skyrim in just 3 years, to the surprise of everyone, including the Nords themselves. The Dwemer, realizing too late what their infighting had cost them, did not want the Aetherium forge to fall into Nordic hands. Before Geller's forces could reach Bethalft, the Dwemer sealed the great lift that provided access to the forge. More than that, they broke the Aetherium crest, the key needed to operate the lift, into 4 pieces. Each city-state took 1 piece, hiding it in their most secure locations, ensuring that no one, not even other Dwemer, could access the forge without cooperation from all 4 cities. The Nordic occupation of the Dwemer cities lasted about 100 years. The Nords couldn't figure out how to operate most of the Dwemer machinery, but they could control the cities themselves, and they used them as staging points for further expansion. Eventually, the Dwemer regained enough strength to reclaim their settlements, driving the Nords back out and re-establishing their independence. But the damage had been done. The Aetherium alliance never reformed. The 4 cities remained separate, distrustful of each other. The Aetherium wars had effectively ended, not because anyone won, but because everyone had lost. The library of Ark-the-Zend was abandoned, its vast stores of knowledge left to gather dust in the darkness. The forge remained sealed, its location gradually forgotten even by the Dwemer themselves. In a way, the Aetherium wars represented the beginning of the end for the Dwemer civilization in Skyrim. They had proven that their vaunted logic and reason could be overwhelmed by emotion and ambition just as easily as any other race. They had shown that even the most sophisticated civilization could tear itself apart from within. And they had demonstrated that sometimes the greatest discoveries lead not to advancement, but to destruction. But the story of Blackreach during this period is not complete without discussing the other inhabitants who were beginning to arrive, those who would eventually inherit the depths when the Dwemer vanished. The Falmer, the betrayed, fall of the Snow Elves. To understand how the Falmer came to dwell in Blackreach, we need to go back to the surface, to a conflict that would reshape the entire face of Skyrim. In the late Merethic era, Skyrim was not a land of men, but of elves. The Snow Elves, also known by their Aldmeris name Falmer, were a proud and ancient race who had inhabited these frozen lands since time immemorial. They were descended from the Aldmer like all elven races, but they had adapted to the harsh northern climate. their skin and hair taking on a pale, almost luminescent quality. They were deeply magical, deeply religious, and their civilization rivaled even the Somerset Isles in its sophistication. But they made a tragic mistake. When the first Atmarans, the ancestors of the Nords, arrived in Skyrim and established their settlement at Sarthal, the Snow, elves initially coexisted with them peacefully. But something changed. Perhaps it was cultural differences, perhaps religious tensions. Perhaps the Snow Elves discovered that beneath Sarthal lay something of immense power, the Eye of Magnus. Whatever the reason, the Snow Elves attacked Sarthal in what became known as the Night of Tears, killing almost every inhabitant and burning the city to the ground. Only 3 humans survived: Ysgramor and his 2 sons. They fled back to Atmora, but they did not stay there. Ysgramor returned with 500 companions, elite warriors who carved through Snow Elf armies like a hot blade through snow. The war that followed was brutal and one-sided. The Nords, driven by vengeance and led by a legendary warrior, systematically destroyed Snow Elf civilization. They pushed the elves from one stronghold to another, burning their cities, scattering their people, pursuing them to the farthest reaches of Skyrim. The final major battle took place at Mosring on the island of Solstheim. There, a Snow Elf leader, known only as the Snow Prince, made his last stand. The battle seemed to be turning in the elves' favor, inspired by their prince's leadership. But in a moment that would echo through history, a young Nord girl named Finna, watching her mother cut down by the Snow Prince, grabbed her mother's sword and threw it through his chest. The Snow Prince fell, and with him fell the last hope of Snow Elf military resistance. The surviving Snow Elves scattered, hunted, desperate. They had nowhere left to go on the surface, so they turned to the only people who might help them, their distant cousins, the Dwemer. And the Dwemer, pragmatic as always, agreed to shelter them. But there was a price. The Dwemer didn't trust the Snow Elves. They saw them as defeated refugees, potentially dangerous, certainly a burden on resources. So they made an offer. The Snow Elves could live in the Dwemer cities and settlements, including the depths of Blackreach, but they had to consume a certain fungus that grew in these underground places. The Dwemer claimed it was necessary for the Snow Elves' health, that it would help them adapt to life without sunlight. It was a lie. The fungus was toxic. It didn't help the Snow Elves adapt, it destroyed them. Over generations, the toxic fungi rendered the Snow Elves blind. Their bodies began to change, adapting to life in eternal darkness, but losing the refinement and grace they had once possessed. Their ears grew larger, their noses more pronounced, better to navigate a world without sight. They walked with a permanent stoop, feeling their way through the darkness. And perhaps worst of all, their minds began to change. The sophisticated culture, the deep magic, the religious devotion, all of it faded away, replaced by something more primal, more savage. The Dwemer didn't help the Snow Elves out of kindness. They enslaved them. The betrayed, as they came to be called, were put to work in the mines, in the forges, doing the dangerous and menial labor that the Dwemer didn't want to do themselves. Generations of Snow Elves lived and died in chains, in darkness, serving the very people who had promised to save them. But slaves, as history has shown time and again, do not remain slaves forever. The betrayed, now barely recognizable as the Snow Elves they had been, eventually rose up against their masters. The rebellion began in Blackreach and spread throughout the Dwemer settlements. This was the War of the Crag, another conflict fought entirely beneath the surface of Skyrim, unknown to the Nords above. The War of the Crag lasted for decades. The Falmer, as they were now called, fought with desperation and savagery. They knew every tunnel, every hidden passage in Blackreach. They bred and tamed the Chorus, those massive insectoid creatures, using them as mounts and as weapons. The Dwemer had their automatons and their advanced weaponry, but the Falmer had numbers and the advantage of fighting on familiar ground in complete darkness. The war might have gone on indefinitely, weakening both sides until neither had the strength to continue, but something happened that changed everything. In the year 700 of the First Era, during the Battle of Red Mountain far to the east in Morrowind, every single Dwemer in existence vanished in an instant. One moment, they were there. The next, gone. Not dead, not fled, simply ceased to exist in this world. Their cities stood empty. Their machines continued to run. Their automatons kept patrolling, but the Dwemer themselves were gone. The cause remains one of the great mysteries of Tamrielic history, but the result for Blackreach was clear. The Falmer had won their war by default. Finally free from the threat of their Dwemer overlords, the Falmer spread throughout Blackreach. But centuries of degradation, of living in darkness and eating toxic fungi, of warfare and slavery, had fundamentally changed them. They were no longer the sophisticated snow elves who had once rivaled the Altmer. They had become something else, something that lived entirely by instinct and violence. They began mounting raids to the surface, small, blind, hunched creatures emerging from cracks in the earth to steal livestock, attack lone travelers, and according to Nord legend, steal children from their cribs. The Falmer became bogeymen, creatures of nightmare that parents used to scare their children into good behavior. Most Nords doubted they even existed, writing them off as legend and superstition. But they were real. In Blackreach and the connected Dwemer ruins throughout Skyrim, the Falmer made their homes. They built crude tents from Chorus chitin, established tribal hierarchies, and slowly, very slowly, began to rebuild some semblance of civilization. By the Fourth Era, when the last Dragonborn would venture into Blackreach, the Falmer had become the dominant force in the depths, more numerous and more organized than they had been in centuries. But Blackreach held secrets beyond even the Falmer's knowledge. The Dwemer may have vanished, but they left behind more than just empty cities and running machines. The Silent City, Dwemer structures, and their purposes. In the western portion of Blackreach stands what scholars have come to call the Silent City, a cluster of Dwemer buildings that represents one of the most intact Dwemer urban areas in all of Skyrim. Unlike the ruins on the surface, which have suffered from weather, time, and Nordic occupation, the structures in Blackreach have been preserved by the stable underground environment. The air here doesn't change temperature dramatically. There's no rain or snow to erode the metal, and until recently, there were no humans to dismantle the machinery for scrap. Walking through the Silent City is like walking through a moment frozen in time. The Dwemer architecture here displays all their characteristic features: precise geometric shapes, brass and bronze metalwork that still gleams in the light of the glowing mushrooms, and complex pipe systems that connect every building into a unified whole. But there's also something unsettling about it. The buildings stand empty, doors open to chambers that haven't been occupied in over 3,000 years. Machinery hums and clanks, performing tasks whose purposes are no longer clear. It's a city that's still alive in some mechanical sense, but utterly dead in every way that matters. The Hall of Rumination is one of the larger structures in the Silent City. Its name, like most Dwemer building names, was assigned by later scholars trying to understand its purpose. The hall features several levels with large open spaces that might have served as meeting areas or perhaps classrooms for teaching younger Dwemer. There are smaller chambers branching off from these open spaces, rooms that might have been studies or private contemplation areas. The acoustics in the Hall of Rumination are remarkable. Sound echoes and reverberates in ways that suggest the Dwemer designed it specifically to enhance speech or perhaps tonal effects. The Debate Hall serves a similar purpose, though its layout suggests a more formal function. There are raised platforms at one end that could have been used by speakers, and tiered seating areas where audiences could have gathered. The Dwemer, for all their focus on logic and reason, still needed places to discuss ideas, to debate theories, to present research findings. The debate hall might have hosted presentations about Aetherium discoveries, arguments about the best methods for extracting the mineral, or philosophical discussions about the nature of reality itself. The pumping station is perhaps the most purely functional structure in the Silent City. Its purpose is clear even to modern observers. It controls the flow of water through this section of Blackreach. The station is filled with massive pumps and pipes, valves that can redirect water to different areas of the cavern, and mechanisms for maintaining pressure throughout the system. What's remarkable is that most of these systems are still operational. After 3,000 years, the pumping station continues to regulate water flow, powered by geothermal energy and maintained by Dwemer engineering so robust that it transcends the civilization that created it. The Silent City catacombs present a darker aspect of Dwemer society. These are burial chambers, proof that despite their focus on logic and reason, the Dwemer still had some sense of ritual around death. The catacombs contain alcoves carved into the walls where bodies were placed, though the bodies themselves are long gone now, claimed by time or by the Falmer who moved into these spaces after the Dwemer vanished. Inscriptions on the walls, written in that angular Dwemer script that few can now read, might be epitaphs or perhaps philosophical statements about the nature of mortality. All of these structures are now occupied by the Falmer and their chorus. The betrayed have made nests in the corners, set up crude tents in halls that once rang with Dwemer debates, and used the catacombs as breeding grounds for their insectoid companions. It's a jarring juxtaposition, the sophisticated Dwemer architecture now home to creatures that represent the opposite of everything the Dwemer valued: instinct over reason, chaos over order, degradation over advancement. But the most significant structure in Blackreach isn't in the Silent City. It stands to the north, isolated from the main cavern, accessible only by crossing several bridges and navigating through Falmer-infested territory. This is the Tower of Mzark, and it contains something that would change the course of Skyrim's history. The Tower of Knowledge, Mzark and the Elder Scroll. The Tower of Mzark is different from other Dwemer structures in Blackreach. While most of the buildings here serve practical purposes, mining, water management, housing, the Tower of Mzark was built for something else entirely: the preservation and protection of knowledge. Specifically, it was designed to safeguard one of the most powerful artifacts in all of existence, an Elder Scroll. Elder Scrolls are objects beyond normal comprehension. They're not simply books or records, they're fragments of creation itself, pieces of the divine plan written when the world was first formed. Reading an Elder Scroll doesn't just give you knowledge, it reveals truths about past, present, and future, but at a cost. Those who read the scrolls often go blind or mad, their mortal minds unable to fully process the information they've glimpsed. Even the gods treat Elder Scrolls with caution. The Dwemer, characteristically, didn't worship the Elder Scroll they possessed. They studied it. They wanted to understand it, to unlock its secrets through observation and analysis rather than divine revelation. The Tower of Mzark was their solution to the problem of how to study something that defies study. The tower itself is a marvel of Dwemer engineering. It rises through multiple levels with a lift that provides access to the surface far above. But the true wonder lies in the tower's heart: the oculory, a massive device designed specifically to interact with the Elder Scroll. The oculory is unlike anything else the Dwemer built. It combines their mastery of optics, their understanding of tonal architecture, and something else. Something that might be called magic if the Dwemer would ever admit to using such a thing. The device consists of several focusing lenses arranged around a central platform. These lenses can be adjusted using precise mechanisms controlled by buttons arranged in a specific pattern. When properly calibrated, the oculory can read an Elder Scroll safely, or as safely as such a thing is possible, projecting its contents in a way that allows observation without the usual catastrophic effects on the observer. But the oculory in the Tower of Mzark wasn't just for reading Elder Scrolls. It was also designed to contain them, to keep them secure and prevent unauthorized access. The tower could only be opened from inside Blackreach, and even then, it required specific keys and knowledge to operate. The Elder Scroll housed here, the Dragon Scroll as it came to be known, contained information about a shout, a word of power that could be used to defeat Alduin the World Eater. This information would prove crucial in the Fourth Era, when Alduin returned after being cast forward through time by ancient heroes. The last Dragonborn, following the main quest line of their adventure, would descend into Blackreach, navigate its dangers, and eventually reach the Tower of Mzark. There, with the help of the oculory and perhaps some trial and error, they would successfully read the Elder Scroll, learning the dragon-rend shout that would allow them to pull dragons from the sky and ultimately defeat Alduin. The fact that the Dwemer possessed an Elder Scroll raises fascinating questions. How did they acquire it? Did they trade for it, steal it, or simply find it somewhere in their deep delving? What did they learn from it? Some scholars speculate that the Dwemer's unusual fate, their instantaneous disappearance, might be connected to knowledge gained from Elder Scrolls. Perhaps they learned something that allowed them to transcend mortality entirely, or perhaps they learned something that destroyed them. The Dwemer aren't available to ask, and the Elder Scrolls keep their secrets. But the Tower of Mzark also serves another purpose for modern explorers. Once the Dragonborn reaches the surface through the tower's lift, it becomes a permanent entrance to Blackreach. No longer do you need to fight through Alftand, Mzinchileft, or Ralbathar each time you want to access the depths. The tower provides quick, easy access, turning Blackreach from a remote location into something much more accessible. This is fortunate because there are other reasons to return to Blackreach beyond the main quest. The cavern holds secrets that many adventurers never discover on their first visit. And hanging above the silent city, impossible to miss but easy to overlook, is one of Blackreach's most remarkable mysteries. The False Sun, Voltheriol, and Ancient Mysteries. Suspended high above the silent city, enclosed in a spherical cage of Dwemer metal, hangs what appears to be a miniature sun. It glows with a warm orange light, pulsing gently, providing illumination to this section of Blackreach. Most adventurers who pass through assume it's some kind of Dwemer lighting mechanism. Impressive, but ultimately just another example of their advanced technology. They would be wrong. The orb is not a light source, or at least that's not its primary function. It's a bell. Specifically, it's a massive tonal resonator designed to produce specific frequencies when struck. The Dwemer built it for reasons that are no longer clear, perhaps as a signaling device, perhaps as part of their tonal architecture research, perhaps for purposes we can't even guess at. But whatever its original purpose, it has an unintended effect, or perhaps a very intended effect that scholars simply don't understand. If someone with sufficient voice, someone who has mastered at least 2 words of the unrelenting force shout, uses that power on the orb, something remarkable happens. The orb rings with a deep, resonant tone that echoes throughout Blackreach. The sound is unlike anything normally heard in the cavern, a pure note that seems to vibrate in your bones as much as in your ears. And from somewhere in the depths, something answers. Voltheriol. A dragon erupts from the cavern shadows, ancient and terrible, drawn by the sound of the orb like a moth to flame. He is massive even by dragon standards, his scales weathered by countless centuries, his eyes burning with intelligence and fury. And as he circles above the silent city, breathing fire and shouting words of power, one question dominates all others. What is a dragon doing in Blackreach? This is the mystery of Volthuriol. Unlike the other dragons in Skyrim, he was not resurrected by Alduin. He doesn't emerge from a burial mound to wreak havoc on Nordic settlements. He doesn't seem to be part of the Dragon War or Alduin's plan to destroy the world. He's simply here, in Blackreach, apparently has been for a very long time. The most common theory is that Volthuriol sought refuge in Blackreach during the Dragon War in the Merethic era. When the ancient Nords turned the tide against the dragons, when they learned to use the Thuum and began hunting their former masters to extinction, some dragons must have fled to places where they thought they would be safe. For a dragon, what could be safer than the deepest depths of the world, in a cavern so vast and complex that even if someone knew you were there, finding you would be nearly impossible? But this raises more questions. How did Volthuriol survive for all these centuries? Dragons are immortal in the sense that they don't age, but they still need to eat. What has he been feeding on in Blackreach? The Falmer? The Chorus? Does he fly to the surface through hidden passages to hunt, or has he found some other way to sustain himself? And why did he stay? The Dragon War ended thousands of years ago. Even if Volthuriol had initially hidden here out of fear, he could have left at any point during the long centuries when dragons were forgotten, when they had passed from history into legend. Instead, he remained in the depths, apparently content or perhaps unable to leave. Some scholars have suggested that Volthuriol isn't just hiding in Blackreach, he's guarding something. Dragons are known for their hoards, their collections of treasure and knowledge. Could there be something in the deepest parts of Blackreach, somewhere beyond where adventurers have explored, that Volthuriol has been protecting? Or perhaps he's been trapped here somehow, bound by Dwemer magic or tonal architecture in ways that even he doesn't fully understand. His name might offer clues. In the dragon language, Vol can mean dark, Thur means overlord, and Yol means fire. So Volthuriol roughly translates to Dark Overlord Fire, or perhaps Fire of the Dark Overlord. This suggests he might have had some position of authority among dragons, perhaps serving directly under Alduin or another powerful dragon. But why would such an important dragon hide away in Blackreach? What we know for certain is limited. Volthuriol will attack anyone who rings the great orb above the silent city. He fights with all the fury and power expected of an ancient dragon. And if defeated, he can be soul-absorbed like any other dragon, proving that despite his mystery, he is indeed a true dragon and not some Dwemer creation or illusion. The battle with Volthuriol, when it happens, is spectacular. He circles through Blackreach, his massive form illuminated by the glowing mushrooms and the bioluminescent ceiling. His fire breath reflects off the metal of the silent city, creating a light show that would be beautiful if it weren't so deadly. And all around, the Falmer and Chorus scurry in panic, unused to seeing their underground domain invaded by something even more dangerous than they are. If you manage to bring him down, Volthuriol falls into the waters or crashes into the stone with the ground-shaking impact. And then, as with all dragons, his flesh burns away in mystical fire, leaving only bones as evidence that he ever existed. The Dragonborn absorbs his soul, gains his power, and Blackreach becomes a little bit safer, a little bit less mysterious. But his presence raises a final, troubling question. If one dragon has been hiding in Blackreach all this time, could there be others? Are there more ancient beings lurking in the deepest caves, the most remote, passages, places where even the Falmer fear to go? Blackreach is vast, far larger than most adventurers ever explore. What other secrets might be hiding in its darkness? The Crimson Chorus, Sinderian, and the Nirnroot. While most adventurers come to Blackreach seeking Dwemer artifacts or Elder Scrolls, there was one visitor who came for something far more mundane: plants. Sindarian was an Altmer alchemist who lived in Cyrodiil during the Third Era. He had spent most of his life researching a peculiar plant called nirnroot, a glowing herb that grew near water and emitted a distinctive chiming sound. Nirnroot had alchemical properties that fascinated Sindarian, and he devoted decades to understanding them. Then, late in his life, a treasure seeker named Obeth Arnasian brought him something extraordinary, a crimson nirnroot. Unlike the green nirnroot found throughout Cyrodiil and Skyrim, this specimen was a deep, vibrant red, and according to Obeth, it grew only in one place. Blackreach, the explorer, had found it while searching the underground cavern for Dwemer artifacts, dismissed it as a noisy red weed, but thought the famous alchemist might pay good money for it. Obeth was right. Sindarian paid him handsomely, not just for the plant, but for a map to Blackreach and a key, likely an attunement sphere or something similar, that would allow access to the depths. For Sindarian, this crimson nirnroot represented the culmination of his life's work. If he could study it, understand why it differed from common nirnroot, he might unlock secrets that had eluded him for decades. He packed up his workshop in Skingrad, sold everything he no longer needed, and made the long journey to Skyrim. Being an honorary member of the College of Winterhold, he stopped there first, seeking information about the region. The college directed him to Avrusa Sarethi, a former student who ran a small farm near Riften and who had once studied under Sindarian himself. Avrusa and her sister welcomed the elderly alchemist. He stayed with them for what Avrusa later described as decades, though Sindarian's own journal suggests a much shorter time. During this period, he taught Avrusa everything he knew about nirnroot cultivation and alchemy, everything except the secret of the crimson nirnroot. That knowledge he kept to himself, knowing that if word got out, other treasure seekers might flood Blackreach and disturb his research. Eventually, he found his way into Blackreach. The journey through Alftand, or one of the other entrances, must have been harrowing for an elderly alchemist, even one with considerable skill. But Sindarian made it through, descended into the depths, and immediately set about establishing a field laboratory in one of the abandoned Dwemer buildings near the entrance to Alftand Cathedral. His initial research confirmed what he suspected. Crimson nirnroot had properties similar to regular nirnroot, but enhanced, more potent. It still grew near water, as most nirnroot did, but it had also developed a symbiotic relationship with the giant fungi that dominated Blackreach. Sindarian theorized that these massive mushrooms absorb moisture from the damp subterranean air like sponges, creating pockets of humidity that allowed nirnroot to grow even far from open water. But crimson nirnroot had one significant disadvantage. It had a much shorter lifespan than its green cousin. While surface nirnroot could live for years, crimson nirnroot seemed to die and regrow in cycles. This made them less plentiful, harder to find. Sindarian calculated that he would need at least 30 specimens to produce what he called his greatest alchemical creation to date. His field journal, found by the last dragonborn clutched in his skeletal hand, ends on a hopeful note. He was confident he could gather the samples he needed, provided the denizens of Blackreach left him alone to do his work. They didn't. What exactly happened to Sindarian is unclear. He might have been killed by the Falmer, who would have seen his light and heard his movements in their domain. He might have been attacked by the Chorus that the Falmer breed as guardians and livestock. He might have encountered one of the automated dwarven spheres that still patrol Blackreach's halls, unable to distinguish between an ancient enemy and a harmless alchemist. Or perhaps, in the most mundane and tragic possibility, he simply grew too old and too weary, and death found him as it finds all mortals eventually, in his laboratory surrounded by his research. The last Dragonborn would discover Sindarian's remains late in the Fourth Era, over 150 years after he ventured into Blackreach. His skeleton was still in his laboratory, his journal still readable, his tools still arranged neatly on his work surfaces. And scattered throughout Blackreach, growing in clusters near water and fungi, were the crimson nirnroot he'd come to study. The quest, A Return to Your Roots, which begins either by finding Sindarian's journal or by harvesting a crimson nirnroot, asks the player to complete what Sindarian started. Gather 30 specimens and bring them to Avrusa Sarethi, allowing her to finish her mentor's work. It's a bittersweet quest, a reminder that Blackreach claims not just warriors and adventurers, but scholars and scientists, anyone who dares to explore its depths. The crimson nirnroot itself serves as a perfect metaphor for Blackreach. Beautiful, unique, valuable, but also isolated, dangerous to reach, and ultimately ephemeral. Like the Dwemer civilization that once thrived here, like the snow elves who sought refuge in these depths, the crimson nirnroot exists in a world apart, adapted to conditions that would kill similar species, hanging on through symbiotic relationships and sheer tenacity. When you gather the 30 specimens and return them to Avrusa, she's sad but not surprised to learn of Sindarian's fate. She knew he was old, knew the journey to Blackreach was dangerous, but she also knew that he died doing what he loved: field research. As a reward for completing his work, she gives you Sindarian's serendipity, a unique ability that gives you a chance to create 2 potions instead of 1. When using an alchemy lab, but perhaps the real reward is simply knowing that Sindarian's research, his life's work, wasn't entirely lost. The knowledge of crimson nirnroot, its properties and potential, survived because someone was willing to descend into the depths and finish what he started. The Great Lifts, connections to the surface. While the Tower of Mazark provides one route to the surface, it's not the only one. The Dwemer, practical as always, built 3 great lifts at strategic points around Blackreach, providing quick access between the depths and the world above. These lifts are engineering marvels, massive elevators that traverse hundreds of feet of solid rock, still functional after thousands of years. The Great Lift at Alftand is located in the northeastern part of Blackreach. It rises to a gatehouse on the surface, northeast of Nightgate Inn and southeast of Wayward Pass. The lift is large enough to transport several people or significant amounts of cargo, and it operates using a system of counterweights and Dwemer machinery that requires no manual pumping or cranking. You simply pull a lever, and ancient gears begin to turn, raising or lowering the platform with smooth efficiency. The Great Lift at Mzinchaleft sits in the northwestern corner of the cavern. Its surface entrance is south of the main Mzinchaleft ruin, providing a much quicker route into Blackreach once you've cleared the initial obstacles. This lift is particularly useful for adventurers who have already explored the depths and need to return for additional crimson, nirnroot, or other resources. The Great Lift at Raldbatar is positioned in the eastern part of Blackreach. It emerges near Sheer Point on the surface, west-southwest of Anga's Mill. This is the lift most directly connected to the original Aetherium mining operations, as Raldbatar was the primary mining city above Blackreach during the Alliance. All 3 great lifts share a crucial characteristic. They can only be activated from within Blackreach initially. The surface gatehouses are locked from the inside, preventing casual access to the depths. This was likely a security measure by the Dwemer, ensuring that surface dwellers couldn't simply stroll into their most secret and valuable territory. But once you activate a lift from below and open its gatehouse, it becomes a permanent, fast-travel-enabled entrance to Blackreach. This is more significant than it might initially seem. Blackreach is enormous, and traversing it on foot can take hours, especially when you're fighting through Falmer camps and avoiding giants. Having 3 separate entrance points, plus the Tower of Mazark, means you can enter at the point closest to wherever you need to go in the cavern, need to visit Sindarian's laboratory near Alftand. Use that lift. Heading to the Silent City? The Mzinchaleft lift is your best bet. Planning to fight Voltheriol? Raldabthar or Mzinchileft will both work. The Great Lifts also provide interesting views of Skyrim's geological structure. As you rise or descend, you can see the layers of rock, the veins of different minerals, even glimpses of smaller caves and passages that branch off from the main shaft. It's a reminder of just how deep Blackreach truly is, buried under thousands of feet of mountain. For the Dwemer, these lifts represented more than just convenience. They were a statement of capability, a demonstration that they had mastered not just horizontal space, but vertical space as well. While other races built tall towers reaching toward the sky, the Dwemer built deep shafts reaching toward the Earth's heart. And with their lifts, they could move between surface and depths as easily as walking through a door. The Forgotten Highway, Blackreach's original purpose. Looking at Blackreach as it exists in the Fourth Era, it's easy to forget what it was originally designed for. Yes, it became a research site during the Aetherium Wars. Yes, it served as a refuge and then a prison for the Snow Elves. Yes, it's now home to the Falmer and their Chorus. But none of these were its original purpose. Blackreach was meant to be a highway, a subterranean road network that connected the major Dwemer cities of Skyrim. Imagine, if you will, being a Dwemer merchant or scholar needing to travel from Alftand in the north to Raldabthar in the east. On the surface, this would be a journey of several days through harsh terrain, exposed to the elements and potentially hostile Nords. But through Blackreach, the same journey could be made in relative comfort and safety, walking well-maintained roads lit by glowing mushrooms, stopping at rest stations and supply depots built specifically for travelers. The roads in Blackreach are still visible if you look carefully. They're the flatter, more carefully constructed paths that wind through the cavern, avoiding the roughest terrain and the steepest climbs. Bridges span chasms and rivers, built with the same attention to engineering precision that characterized all Dwemer construction. At regular intervals, you can find the remains of small structures that might have served as waypoints, places where travelers could rest, resupply, or wait out any disturbances in the cavern. The Dwemer even built farms in Blackreach, or at least areas designed for cultivating certain types of fungi and subterranean plants. The giant mushrooms that dominate the cavern's landscape weren't entirely natural. The Dwemer cultivated them, encouraged their growth, perhaps even engineered them to produce more light and grow larger than they normally would. These mushrooms provided food, light, and possibly raw materials for various Dwemer crafts. The water system in Blackreach was also carefully managed. The pumping stations and pipe networks weren't just for removing excess water or preventing flooding. They were part of a sophisticated irrigation system that directed water to where it was needed, maintained water pressure for various mechanical systems, and kept the air in certain areas humid enough to support plant growth. During its height, Blackreach must have been bustling with activity. Dwemer traveling between cities, merchants transporting goods, scholars exchanging research, engineers maintaining the systems that kept the cavern habitable. There would have been light everywhere, not just from the mushrooms, but from Dwemer lamps and devices. The air would have been filled with the sounds of conversation, of machinery operating normally, of foot traffic on the stone roads. Try to imagine the cavern not as the desolate, dangerous place it is in the Fourth Era, but as a thriving thoroughfare. The silent city not silent at all, but full of debates and discussions. The halls and structures not occupied by hostile Falmer, but by Dwemer going about their daily business. The water not tainted and dangerous, but clean and controlled. The darkness not oppressive, but managed, kept at bay by sophisticated lighting systems. This was what the Dwemer built. This was what they lost. And in many ways, the fate of Blackreach mirrors the fate of the Dwemer themselves. What was once a marvel of engineering and civilization has become a ruin, a shadow of its former glory, inhabited by those who can barely comprehend what they're living in. But even as a ruin, even thousands of years after its builders vanished, Blackreach remains remarkable. The roads still serve their purpose, even if few use them. The water systems still function, even if no one maintains them. The lights, both natural and artificial, still illuminate the depths. The great lifts still rise and fall. The Tower of Mazark still houses its Elder Scroll. In a way, this might be the most impressive achievement of all. The Dwemer built Blackreach not just to last for years or decades, but for millennia. They built it to outlive them, whether they intended to or not. And it has. The Geode Gardens, mineral wealth of the depths. One of the first things any adventurer notices upon entering Blackreach, after getting over the sheer scale of the place, is the unusual geology. The cavern is filled with geode formations, massive crystalline structures that protrude from the rock like the bones of the earth breaking through skin. These aren't ordinary mineral deposits. They're something special, something that makes Blackreach valuable beyond its role as a Dwemer highway. Geode veins are scattered throughout Blackreach, 34 in the main cavern and 2 more in the Silent City catacombs. These veins can be mined like any other ore deposit, but what you extract from them is unique, soul gems. Not the filled soul gems that capture the essences of defeated creatures, but empty soul gems, ready to be used for enchanting and magical purposes. The quality of soul gems you can mine from these geodes depends on your level. At lower levels, you'll mostly find petty and lesser soul gems. As you grow more powerful, common and greater soul gems become available. And at the highest levels, starting around level 16 and becoming increasingly common, as you approach level 30, you can even mine grand soul gems and black soul gems from these veins. This raises fascinating questions about the nature of soul gems and their connection to Blackreach. Soul gems are fundamentally magical objects, crystals that can trap and contain the life force of living beings. Where do they come from? How are they formed? The presence of so many soul gem geodes in Blackreach suggests that the cavern has some unusual metaphysical properties, that the boundary between the physical and the spiritual is somehow thinner here. The Dwemer certainly recognize the value of these formations. Their Aetherium research involved studying crystalline structures and their magical properties, so discovering natural soul gem formations in Blackreach must have been incredibly exciting for them. They likely mined these geodes extensively, using the soul gems for their own enchanting work and possibly for powering some of their more complex machinery. But there's something else interesting about these geodes. Not all of them produce soul gems. 13 of the 34 geode veins in Blackreach will, when mined, yield corundum ore and regular gems instead of soul gems. This suggests that the formations are either geologically diverse or that something about the metaphysical properties of these specific veins differs from the others. The unofficial Skyrim patch addresses this inconsistency, modifying these aberrant geode veins so that they also produce soul gems. But in the original game, the mixture of soul gem geodes and mundane mineral veins adds to the sense that Blackreach is a place where normal rules don't quite apply, where the expected and the extraordinary exist side by side. Beyond the geode veins, Blackreach also contains more conventional mineral wealth. There are veins of ebony, that dark volcanic glass highly prized for armor and weapons. Gold veins glitter in the mushroom light. Corundum, iron, and other useful metals can be found if you know where to look. The Dwemer mined all of these extensively, using the raw materials to feed their forges and workshops. But the true treasures of Blackreach weren't the common metals. They were the rare and unique resources. The Aetherium, the soul gems, the crimson nirnroot, and possibly other materials that have been lost to time or remain undiscovered. The Dwemer knew they had something special in Blackreach, and they guarded it jealously, which is why access was so restricted and why the entrances were so well hidden. For modern adventurers, the geode veins represent prosperitasa, significant source of wealth. Soul gems are always valuable, and the ability to mine them directly, rather than having to buy them from merchants or fill them through soul trapping, is enormously useful for anyone pursuing enchanting. A thorough exploration of Blackreach, hitting every geode vein, can yield enough soul gems to enchant a full set of armor and weapons. But there's also something slightly unsettling about mining soul gems from the earth. These aren't manufactured objects or crystals that naturally form through mundane geological processes. These are vessels designed to contain the essence of living beings, and they're growing in the rock like some kind of spiritual ore. What does that say about Blackreach? What forces are at work here that can create such things? Haupt. The glowing garden, bioluminescent life. The most visually striking feature of Blackreach isn't the Dwemer architecture or even the geode formations. It's the life, the plants and fungi that have adapted to this subterranean environment in ways that seem almost magical. Blackreach glows, not with artificial light, though there's some of that from still functioning Dwemer mechanisms, but with bioluminescence, living light produced by the organisms that call this cavern home. The giant mushrooms are the most obvious examples. These aren't ordinary mushrooms scaled up. They're a unique species that has evolved or been engineered to grow to enormous size. Their caps, easily as large as small houses, glow with a soft blue-green light that's bright enough to illuminate significant areas of the cavern. The stalks of these mushrooms are as thick as ancient trees, and their root systems must extend deep into the cavern floor to support such massive growth. Some scholars believe the Dwemer genetically modified these mushrooms or used tonal architecture to enhance their growth. The mushrooms are simply too perfect, too well suited to illuminating Blackreach, to be entirely natural. They grow in optimal locations for lighting the cavern. Their glow is exactly the right color and intensity to allow Dwemer eyes to see clearly, and they seem unusually resistant to disease and damage. But beyond the giant mushrooms, Blackreach is filled with smaller bioluminescent plants, moss that glows faintly in various colors, vines that emit a soft white light, patches of lichen that pulse with a rhythmic glow as if breathing. All of this combines to create an environment that's unlike anywhere else in Skyrim, a world of soft, living light in the depths of the earth. The ceiling of Blackreach is particularly remarkable. It's covered in bioluminescent growth, possibly a type of algae or perhaps something entirely unique to this cavern. The result is a canopy of blue light that creates the illusion of a sky, albeit an alien one. Looking up in Blackreach, you don't see darkness. You see this ethereal blue glow, and for a moment you can almost forget that thousands of feet of rock separate you from the actual sky. There are also vines that appear to defy gravity. Near the Raldler Deep Market, massive glowing vines don't hang down from the ceiling. They float upward, as if reaching toward some source of light or energy above. This impossible sight has no clear explanation. Perhaps it's an effect of tonal architecture, areas where the Dwemer have altered the local laws of physics. Perhaps it's a property of the vines themselves, a unique method of growth. Or perhaps it's connected to the metaphysical strangeness of Blackreach, that thinness between worlds that allows soul gems to form in the rock. The water in Blackreach is another unusual feature. The pools and rivers aren't clear. They're an opaque teal color that makes it impossible to see what lies beneath. This could be mineral content, particles suspended in the water from the various ores and crystals in the area. Or it could be some form of bioluminescent algae or bacteria, microorganisms that give the water its distinctive color and possibly its faint glow. All of this bioluminescent life creates an ecosystem that's entirely self-contained. The mushrooms and plants don't need sunlight because they create their own light. They draw nutrients from the water and the rock, possibly feeding on minerals that seep up from deeper in the earth. And this plant life, in turn, supports animal life. Giants roam certain areas of Blackreach, grazing on the giant mushrooms and the smaller plants. These aren't the mammoths herding giants of the surface, but they're clearly the same species, adapted to life underground. How they got here is a mystery. Did they wander in through some passage and find they couldn't or didn't want to leave? Were they brought here by the Dwemer for some purpose? Or have they been living in Blackreach for so long that they're essentially a separate subspecies? The Chorus, those massive insectoid creatures the Falmer breed, are clearly native to Blackreach or similar subterranean environments. They're blind like the Falmer, relying on other senses to navigate and hunt. They have heavily armored carapaces that the Falmer harvest for making armor and tools, and they produce a kind of egg that's both nutritious and valuable, though collecting them from Chorus nests is understandably dangerous. Then there are the Wisp Mothers, spectral beings of frost and magic that drift through certain areas of Blackreach. Their presence here is harder to explain. Wisp Mothers are associated with cold and death, but they're usually found outdoors, in areas exposed to the elements. Why would they inhabit Blackreach? Are they drawn by the spiritual strangeness of the place, the same quality that allows soul gems to form? Or do they have some other connection to the cavern's history? The Falmer themselves complete the ecosystem, predators at the top of the food chain. They hunt the Chorus, the Wisp Mothers, probably the giants when they can, and anything else that wanders into their territory. They've developed a complex society based on this environment, building their tents from Chorus chitin, using the bioluminescent plants for crude lighting, and farming the Chorus for food and materials. In a way, Blackreach represents a completely alien world hidden beneath Skyrim. Every organism here has adapted to conditions that would be fatal to most surface life. No sunlight, limited air circulation, isolation from the outside world. Yet life not only survives here, it thrives, creating a complex web of interdependence that has persisted for thousands of years. The price of ambition. Lessons from the depths. What can we learn from Blackreach? What lessons does this vast underground cavern offer to those who study its history and explore its depths? First, and perhaps most obviously, Blackreach stands as a monument to what can be achieved through logic, reason, and engineering. The Dwemer built something that has outlasted them by thousands of years, something so sophisticated that even after all this time, much of it still functions. The great lifts still rise and fall. The water systems still manage the flow of rivers and streams. The lights still glow. This is engineering at a level that modern civilization can barely comprehend, let alone replicate. But Blackreach also serves as a warning about the dangers of hubris. The Dwemer believed they could master everything through sufficient application of reason and technology. They sought to improve upon the world, to reshape it according to their vision of perfection. They found Aetherium and immediately sought to exploit it, forming alliances and building forges without considering whether some things might be beyond their ability to control. The Aetherium wars that followed showed the flaw in their philosophy. All the logic and reason in the world couldn't overcome basic emotions like greed, ambition, and pride. 4 cities that should have been able to work together peacefully tore themselves apart over control of a resource. Their civil war weakened them to the point where they fell to Nordic conquest, something that should have been impossible given their technological superiority. The Snow Elves' fate offers another lesson, this one about the dangers of desperation and misplaced trust. The Snow Elves sought refuge in Blackreach because they had nowhere else to go, and they accepted the Dwemer's terms without fully understanding what they were agreeing to. The result was the loss of their eyesight, their culture, their very identity as a people. The sophisticated Snow Elves became the savage Falmer, a transformation so complete that most people in the Fourth Era don't even realize they're the same race. But perhaps the most profound lesson from Blackreach is about impermanence. The Dwemer built their highway to last for ages, and it did. But it no longer serves its original purpose. The roads go largely unused. The cities stand empty. The machinery runs without anyone to benefit from its operation. All of the Dwemer's achievements, all of their engineering marvels, all of their accumulated knowledge, it all means nothing without the people who created it. Or does it? Because even as a ruin, even occupied by Falmer and Chorus, even largely forgotten by the surface world, Blackreach still has value. The Tower of Mzark still protects its Elder Scroll. The geode veins still produce soul gems. The crimson nirnroot still grows, offering unique alchemical properties to those who can gather it. And scholars like Sindarian still come here to study and learn, even at great personal risk. Perhaps the true lesson is that nothing is ever completely lost. The Dwemer vanished, but they left behind knowledge that others can still use. The Snow Elves were transformed into Falmer, but Knight Paladin Gelibor and a few others survived, keeping alive the memory of what they once were. Civilizations fall, knowledge is forgotten, great works crumble, but somehow fragments always survive. Something always endures. For the last Dragonborn, Blackreach represents a crucial part of their journey. Without access to the Elder Scroll in the Tower of Mzark, they couldn't learn the Dragonrend shout. Without that shout, they couldn't defeat Alduin. The fate of the entire world hinged on their willingness to descend into these depths, to navigate past the Falmer and the Chorus and the automatons, to reach that tower and read that scroll. In that sense, the Dwemer's greatest achievement in Blackreach wasn't the architecture or the engineering. It was creating a place that would preserve crucial knowledge for thousands of years, until the moment when that knowledge would be needed most. Did they intend this? Did they know that one day a Dragonborn would need to access their Elder Scroll to save the world? Almost certainly not. But it happened anyway, which suggests that even the Dwemer, for all their logic and planning, couldn't fully predict the consequences of their actions. The modern age, Blackreach in the Fourth Era. By the time of Skyrim's events in the Fourth Era, Blackreach has been effectively lost to the surface world for 3,000 years. Oh, there are legends and stories. Scholars at the College of Winterhold know it exists, at least in theory. Some books mention it briefly, usually in the context of discussing the Dwemer or the Aetherium Wars. But practical knowledge of how to reach it, what you'll find there, what dangers await, all of that has been forgotten. This makes sense when you consider the access requirements. To enter Blackreach, you need an attunement sphere or similar device. You need to fight your way through either Alftand, Mzincheleft, or Raldthar, all of which are extensive ruins filled with hostile automatons and Falmer. You need to be skilled enough, strong enough, or lucky enough to survive these challenges. And even if you make it through, you're deposited into an enormous cavern, with limited supplies and no clear way to navigate. Most people who venture into the deeper Dwemer ruins don't come back. The dangers are simply too great for average explorers. Even experienced adventurers think twice before delving too deep. So Blackreach remains isolated, visited perhaps once or twice per generation by someone skilled or desperate or foolish enough to make the attempt. But in 4E201, several factors converge to bring Blackreach back into the spotlight. First, the return of the dragons and Alduin's threat to the world creates an urgent need to access the Elder Scroll. The Greybeards direct the last Dragonborn to speak with the mage Septimus Cygnus, who in turn provides the means to reach Blackreach. Septimus is an interesting case. He's been driven mad by his research into the Dwemer, but his madness includes genuine insights. He knows about Blackreach, knows about the attunement sphere, and knows what's needed to access the depths. Whether his knowledge comes from his own research or from the influence of Hermaeus Mora, the Daedric Prince of Knowledge, is unclear. But without Septimus, the Dragonborn might never have reached the Tower of Mzark in time. Second, there's the research of Catria, a Nord explorer who spent 20 years investigating the legends of the Aetherium Wars. She believed the Aetherium forge truly existed and could be found if someone looked hard enough. Her research led her to Aetherium, where she died in a collapse, but her spirit lingered, unable to rest until her work was complete. The last Dragonborn, through the quest Lost to the Ages in the Dawnguard DLC, can help Katria finish what she started. This involves traveling to all 4 of the original Alliance cities, Aetherium, Raldabthar, Betharzel, and Mzulft, to recover the 4 pieces of the Aetherium crest. Once assembled, the crest provides access to the Aetherium forge beneath Bethalft, where one of 3 powerful artifacts can be created. This quest brings renewed attention to Blackreach and the Aetherium Wars, reminding scholars that there's still much to be learned from Dwemer ruins. More importantly, it results in the creation of at least one new ethereal artifact, the first such item crafted in over 3,000 years. Whether this is a good thing or a potentially dangerous reopening of old conflicts depends on who wields the artifact and for what purpose. Third, there's Sindarian's research into Crimson Nirnroot, which brings alchemists' attention to Blackreach's unique ecology. Even though Sindarian himself died, his work survived through his journal, and the Dragonborn's completion of his research provides valuable data about this rare plant. Avrusa Sarethi now possesses samples of Crimson Nirnroot and understanding of its properties, though cultivating it on the surface remains challenging. These 3 storylines, the main quest, the Aetherium quest, and the Crimson Nirnroot quest, all converge on Blackreach, making it one of the most visited and most important locations in Skyrim during the Dragon Crisis. What had been forgotten and ignored suddenly becomes crucial to multiple ongoing events. But perhaps the most significant aspect of Blackreach in the 4th Era is what it represents to the Falmer. For them, Blackreach isn't a ruin or a historical curiosity. It's home. They've lived here for thousands of years, adapting to the darkness, building their society, surviving despite everything that's been done to them. Knight Paladin Gelibor, one of the last uncorrupted snow elves, suggests that the Falmer are slowly evolving, becoming more organized and intelligent. He notes that if communication could be established, relations between the Falmer and surface races might improve. This raises the possibility that the Falmer aren't just savage monsters to be fought and killed, but a people capable of change and growth. The evidence supports Gelibor's theory. Falmer society in Blackreach shows signs of complexity. They have a hierarchy, with chieftains leading groups. They breed and manage Chorus herds for food and materials. They build structures, admittedly crude ones, but structures nonetheless. They even have what might be religious or cultural practices, constructing certain arrangements of bones and Chorus parts that serve no obvious practical purpose. If the Falmer continue to evolve and organize, Blackreach might one day become something more than a dangerous ruin. It could become a proper civilization again, underground certainly, but no less valid for that. The Falmer might reclaim not just the ruins, but the spirit of what Blackreach once represented. A thriving community adapted to life beneath the surface. Of course, this is speculation. The Falmer remain hostile to surface dwellers, and centuries of conflict and mistrust would need to be overcome. But the possibility exists, and that possibility makes Blackreach more than just a dungeon to be explored and cleared. It makes it a place with potential, with a future as well as a past. What? The Falmer's world, society in darkness. To truly understand Blackreach as it exists in the 4th Era, we need to understand its primary inhabitants, the Falmer. Most adventurers see them only as enemies, threats to be eliminated while exploring the ruins. But if you observe carefully, if you take the time to study their behavior and their settlements before engaging in combat, a more complex picture emerges. The Falmer are organized into what appear to be tribal or clan structures. Not every Falmer you encounter in Blackreach is equal in status. There are warriors, obviously, the ones who attack intruders with their distinctive Chorus chitin weapons. There are servants or laborers, Falmer, that seem to be performing maintenance tasks or tending to chorus. And there are the warmongers and shadowmasters, elite Falmer, that wear more elaborate armor and wield more powerful magic. Above all of these are the chieftains. These Falmer are larger, better armored, and significantly more dangerous than their kin. They occupy the central positions in Falmer camps, often in the best-built structures or the most defensible positions. When combat begins, other Falmer seem to coordinate around these chieftains, suggesting that they function as genuine leaders rather than just being the strongest fighters. The Falmer have developed a sophisticated relationship with the chorus. These massive insectoid creatures aren't simply wild animals that happen to coexist with the Falmer. They've been domesticated, bred, and managed in ways that suggest genuine animal husbandry practices. Different chorus serve different purposes. Some are clearly guards or weapons, aggressive specimens kept near the entrances to Falmer settlements. Others seem to be livestock, kept in pens or confined areas where they're protected from threats. The Falmer harvest chorus in multiple ways. The chitin from their carapaces is the primary building material for Falmer structures. It's also worked into armor and weapons, shaped and hardened through techniques the Falmer have developed. Chorus eggs are collected and likely used as food, rich in protein, and able to be stored for extended periods. Even the poison that chorus produce is valuable, used to coat weapons or possibly for other purposes we don't fully understand. But perhaps most remarkably, the Falmer have created breeding programs for different types of chorus. The hunters and reapers are clearly specialized variants, larger and more aggressive than standard chorus. The hunters have enhanced sensory capabilities, making them particularly effective at tracking prey through the darkness. The reapers are heavily armored combat variants. This level of selective breeding suggests that the Falmer have been working with chorus for many generations, carefully selecting for desired traits. Falmer architecture, such as it is, reveals much about their adaptation to Blackreach. Their structures are built primarily from chorus chitin, formed into curved walls and dome-shaped roofs. These buildings are small by our standards, but perfectly suited to the Falmer's needs. The entrances are low, forcing larger creatures to stoop or crawl, giving the Falmer a defensive advantage. The interiors are divided into small chambers, possibly sleeping areas or storage spaces. What's interesting is how these structures are positioned. They're rarely built in the open. Instead, the Falmer construct their camps in areas with natural defensive advantages: narrow passages, elevated positions, places surrounded by difficult terrain. They use the Dwemer buildings when possible, occupying rooms and chambers that provide ready-made shelter. But they also build their own structures within these buildings, creating smaller spaces within the larger Dwemer architecture. The layout of Falmer camps suggests careful planning. There's usually a central area where the chieftain resides. Around this are the dwellings of warriors and important members of the tribe. Further out are work areas where chorus are tended or where materials are processed. And at the periphery are guard posts, positions where sentries can detect approaching threats. This organization isn't random, it's deliberate, suggesting that the Falmer are capable of strategic thinking despite their degraded state. Communication among the Falmer is something scholars don't fully understand. They clearly communicate with each other, coordinating attacks and responding to threats as a group. But they don't seem to use verbal language in the way other races do. Instead, they make clicking sounds, hisses, and guttural calls that might convey meaning. Some researchers believe this is a simplified version of the Snow Elves' original language, broken down into its most basic acoustic elements. Others think it's an entirely new form of communication that evolved after the Falmer lost their sight. The Falmer also appear to use touch and possibly chemical signals to communicate. They often pat or stroke each other when passing, which might be a form of reassurance or identification, and they seem to mark territories with some kind of scent, possibly from glands in their bodies or possibly using chorus secretions. These markers might convey information about who controls an area or warn of dangers. Religion or spirituality among the Falmer is difficult to determine. They construct strange totems from bones, chorus parts, and other materials. These totems are placed at significant locations, entrances to settlements, crossroads in tunnels, areas where battles were fought. Do these serve a religious function, marking sacred spaces or honoring Falmer dead? Are they territorial markers, warnings to other Falmer groups, or are they something else entirely, serving purposes we can't fathom? One particularly disturbing aspect of Falmer society is their relationship with what are called servants. These are humans or other surface dwellers who have been captured by the Falmer and kept alive. They're kept in primitive cages or pens, treated as property. Their ultimate fate is unclear and probably best not speculated on in detail. But their existence suggests that the Falmer understand the concept of captivity and forced servitude, which makes a dark kind of sense given their own history as slaves of the Dwemer. The Falmer have also developed unique combat tactics suited to fighting in complete darkness. They don't charge blindly at enemies. Instead, they use hit-and-run techniques, attacking from multiple directions, using the terrain and their intimate knowledge of their territory to their advantage. They are particularly effective at ambush, emerging from side passages or dropping from above when their prey is already engaged with other threats. Their weapons and armor, while crude by surface standards, are actually quite sophisticated for a people working without sight. The weapons are balanced properly, designed to be effective without needing to see your target. The armor provides good protection while remaining light enough for the Falmer's guerrilla tactics. Everything is created through touch and experience, with techniques passed down from one generation to the next. Some Falmer have developed what can only be described as magical abilities. The Shadow Masters use frost magic, hurling ice spikes and creating storms of freezing air. This is particularly interesting because the Dwemer actively suppressed magical abilities among the enslaved snow elves. The fact that magical talent has re-emerged suggests either that some Falmer maintain these abilities in secret, or that magical aptitude is so fundamental to elvish nature that it can't be completely eliminated. The Falmer life cycle is something we understand only partially. They clearly reproduce, evidenced by the presence of Falmer of different sizes and apparent ages. The younger Falmer seem to stay close to the center of camps, possibly being raised communally. As they mature, they take on different roles within the tribe. Whether this role assignment is based on ability, inheritance, or some other factor is unknown. Life expectancy for the Falmer is probably much shorter than it was for the Snow Elves. The degraded state of their bodies, the harsh environment, the constant threat of conflict, all of these would reduce lifespan significantly. But elves are inherently long-lived, so even degraded Falmer might live for a century or more if they avoid violence and disease. What's perhaps most tragic about observing Falmer society is seeing glimpses of what they once were. The Snow Elves built great cities, practiced sophisticated magic, worshipped their gods with beautiful ceremonies. They created art and music and literature. All of that is gone now, burned away by toxic fungi and centuries of suffering. What remains is a shadow, a fragment, a people who have lost almost everything that made them who they were. And yet, they endure. That perhaps is the most remarkable thing about the Falmer. Despite everything that's been done to them, despite being blinded, enslaved, degraded, and scattered, they survive. They've adapted to conditions that would destroy most races. They've built a new society from the ashes of their old one. They've found ways to thrive in an environment that's actively hostile to most forms of life. Knight Paladin Gelibor believes the Falmer can change, can evolve, can perhaps one day reclaim some portion of their heritage. He sees in them the potential for redemption, the possibility that even the most profound fall can eventually lead to a rise. Whether he's right, or whether this is just the desperate hope of a man who has lost everything and everyone he knew, only time will tell. But walking through Blackreach, observing the Falmer camps, watching how they've adapted and survived, it's hard not to feel that Gelebor might be on to something. The Falmer are becoming more organized, more complex in their social structures, more sophisticated in their tool use and tactics. In another 1,000 years, what might they become? Could the betrayed find their way back to being something like the Snow Elves? Or will they evolve into something entirely new? A race shaped by darkness and hardship into forms their ancestors wouldn't recognize. These are questions that Blackreach poses but doesn't answer. Like so much else in this vast cavern, the ultimate fate of the Falmer remains a mystery, a story still being written in the darkness beneath Skyrim. Power. The Automaton's Vigil, Dwemer machines, and their purpose. While the Falmer are the living inhabitants of Blackreach, they share the cavern with guardians that are neither living nor dead, the Dwemer automatons. These mechanical constructs continue their patrols and tasks thousands of years after their creators vanished, a testament to Dwemer engineering that borders on the unbelievable. The automatons come in several distinct types, each serving different functions. The dwarven spiders are the most common, small constructs about the size of a large dog. They're built for mobility and reconnaissance, with their multiple legs allowing them to traverse almost any terrain and even walk on walls and ceilings. When they detect an intruder, they emit a high-pitched alert sound and begin their attack, launching themselves at targets with surprising speed. The spiders are armed with a mechanism that fires bolts of lighting, a weapon that's both effective at range and doesn't require ammunition in the traditional sense. This suggests they're powered by some internal source, possibly the same steam-based system that drives their locomotion. When destroyed, spiders often drop Dwemer metal scraps, broken mechanisms, and occasionally a soul gem, which raises interesting questions about whether these machines have something like souls or if the gems simply power their systems. Dwarven spheres represent a step up in both sophistication and threat level. In their passive state, they roll through the corridors on a single large wheel, looking almost spherical, hence their name. But when they detect a threat, they unfold, revealing a humanoid torso with retractable blades and a crossbow mechanism. The transformation takes only seconds, and the shift from passive patrol mode to active combat mode is both impressive and terrifying. Spheres are faster than they appear, able to close distances rapidly and engage in close combat with their blade arms. They're also equipped with a crossbow that fires bolts with remarkable accuracy, making them dangerous at any range. Their construction is more robust than spiders, with heavier armor plating that can deflect all but the most powerful blows. Defeating a sphere requires either overwhelming force, precise strikes at weak points in their armor, or magic that can disrupt their internal systems. The most formidable automatons are the Dwarven Centurions. These are war machines in the truest sense, massive constructs that tower over even the largest humanoid. A Centurion stands perhaps 8 or 9 feet tall, built with thick armor plating that can withstand tremendous punishment. They're powered by what appear to be steam-driven systems, with visible pipes and venting that release bursts of steam during operation. Centurions are armed with a massive hammer, or axe, integrated into one arm, capable of crushing or cleaving through armor with devastating force. Their other arm houses a steam attack, able to project scalding vapor at enemies, particularly effective against multiple targets. The most dangerous Centurions also carry crossbow mechanisms or magical attack systems, making them threats at any range. But what's most remarkable about Centurions isn't their combat capability. It's their apparent autonomy. While spiders and spheres follow what seem to be relatively simple programmed behaviors, Centurions show something that almost resembles intelligence. They assess tactical situations, focus on the most dangerous threats, and even seem to learn from combat as it progresses. This has led some scholars to speculate that centurions might have some form of artificial consciousness, a machine intelligence created by the Dwemer. All of these automatons share certain characteristics. They run on internal power sources that never seem to deplete, suggesting either incredibly efficient energy systems or some form of connection to external power supplies. They can self-repair to a degree, with damaged automatons sometimes reconstructing themselves from available parts. And they all respond to certain tonal frequencies, which might be how the Dwemer communicated with and controlled their creations. But here's the fascinating question. What are these automatons actually doing? Yes, they attack intruders, but that's a defensive response. In their normal state, when no threats are present, they patrol specific routes, maintain certain areas, and perform tasks whose purposes are no longer clear. Spiders climb walls and seem to inspect them, possibly checking for structural damage. Spheres roll through corridors following precise paths that might represent patrol routes. Centurions stand guard in significant locations, monitoring their surroundings with whatever sensory equipment they possess. This suggests that the automatons aren't just security systems. They're maintenance systems designed to keep the Dwemer cities and installations functioning even without organic supervision. They might be repairing damage when they can, monitoring for hazards, keeping the water systems flowing and the air circulating. In other words, these machines are why Blackreach is still inhabitable. After 3,000 years. The Dwemer created a self-sustaining system, and the automatons are an integral part of that system. There's also the matter of how the automatons recognize threats. They don't attack indiscriminately. They ignore the Falmer for the most part, unless a specific Falmer actually attacks them. They don't hunt the Chorus or the giants that roam Blackreach, but they immediately engage any person from the surface races. How do they make these distinctions? Do they recognize racial characteristics? Do they respond to some kind of identification signal that the Falmer somehow emit? Or is it simpler, any creature behaving in a certain way or entering certain restricted areas triggers an attack response? The relationship between the Falmer and the automatons is particularly interesting. For the most part, they coexist. The Falmer have clearly learned which areas the automatons patrol heavily and which areas are relatively safe. They've figured out how to move through automaton-controlled zones without triggering attacks. In some cases, the Falmer even seem to use the automatons as a kind of security system, deliberately leading surface intruders into areas where the machines will attack. But the automatons don't serve the Falmer. They're not protecting Falmer settlements or responding to Falmer commands. They simply maintain their pre-programmed routines, indifferent to who rules the ruins above their heads. This neutrality is both a blessing and a curse for the Falmer. The machines don't hunt them, but they also don't help them, and a Falmer who wanders into the wrong area can be killed by an automaton as quickly as any surface dweller. Some scholars have theorized that the automatons might be connected to a central control system, possibly located in Blackreach or in one of the connected cities. If this control system could be found and accessed, it might be possible to issue new commands to the machines, to reprogram them, or even shut them down. But finding such a system after 3,000 years, assuming it exists and still functions, would be extraordinarily difficult, and tampering with it could have unpredictable consequences. There's something almost melancholy about the automatons when you really think about it. They're following orders given to them thousands of years ago by people who no longer exist. They're maintaining cities that will never again be occupied by their builders. They're guarding treasures that their creators can never reclaim. They're locked in an eternal vigil, unable to adapt to changed circumstances, unable to question or understand why they continue their tasks. But they do continue. Long after organic life would have given up, long after flesh and bone would have crumbled, the machines persist. They roll and walk and patrol through Blackreach, through corridors that echo with their mechanical footfalls, fulfilling purposes that may no longer matter to anyone but themselves. In their own way, they're as much a monument to the Dwemer as any building or artifact. They're proof that the Dwemer understood permanence in a way that most civilizations never achieve. When you hear the distinctive sound of a dwarven sphere rolling through the darkness, when you see the glow of a dwarven spider's lightning weapon charging up, when you feel the ground shake as a centurion takes its first thunderous step toward you, you're experiencing something that hasn't changed in 3,000 years. These machines attacked Dwemer enemies in exactly the same way. They defended these same corridors. They made these same sounds. In a world where everything changes, where empires rise and fall, where entire races can be transformed or disappear, the automatons of Blackreach remain constant. They're the one thing in the cavern that continues exactly as the Dwemer intended. And in their mechanical devotion to duty, in their perfect execution of ancient commands, they've achieved a kind of immortality that their creators sought but never found, navigating the abyss, the challenge of exploration. One of the first things any adventurer discovers upon entering Blackreach is that this is not a place meant for easy navigation. The cavern is vast, yes, but it's also labyrinthine, filled with dead ends and loops, elevated sections and sunken areas, bridges that lead nowhere and passages that circle back on themselves. The in-game map, that useful tool that helps you navigate the surface world of Skyrim, becomes almost useless in Blackreach. It can only display a portion of the cavern at any given time, and the three-dimensional nature of the space means that what appears to be a direct route on the map might actually require extensive detours. The teal haze that fills much of Blackreach compounds navigation difficulties. Landmarks that should be visible from a distance fade into this haze, making it difficult to orient yourself or maintain a straight course toward your destination. You might see a distinctive Dwemer structure or a particularly large cluster of mushrooms in the distance, only to have it disappear into the haze as you try to approach it. This creates a disorienting effect where you can spend hours walking towards something that never seems to get any closer. The vertical nature of Blackreach presents its own challenges. You might see your destination on a different level than where you currently stand, but finding a way up or down to that level can be incredibly difficult. The Dwemer built ramps and staircases connecting different areas, but these aren't always obvious and they don't always go where you expect. You might climb a long ramp only to discover that it dead ends at a Falmer camp or a sealed door, forcing you to backtrack and try another route. Water is both an obstacle and a guide in Blackreach. The main river cuts through the cavern, and while you can swim in it, doing so is dangerous. The current is strong in places, and the opaque water means you can't see what might be lurking beneath. Some areas are only accessible by swimming, which means managing your stamina carefully and hoping you don't encounter any hostile creatures while you're vulnerable in the water. The smaller streams and pools can be easier to navigate, but they're also prime locations for Falmer ambushes. The Falmer themselves make exploration more complicated. They don't just stay in their camps waiting for adventurers to find them. They patrol the areas around their settlements, set ambushes in narrow passages, and use the terrain to their advantage. In Blackreach, you're always aware that the Falmer know this territory far better than you do. They can navigate in complete darkness, which means that even in areas that seem well lit to you, you might stumble into an ambush from a side passage you didn't notice. Chorus add another layer of danger. These creatures often burrow beneath the ground, erupting upward when prey gets close. In the mushroom groves, where visibility is already limited by the caps and stalks, Chorus attacks can come from any direction. And because they're armored and venomous, even a single Chorus can be a significant threat if you're not prepared. Then there are the giants. Yes, giants live in Blackreach. and encountering one in the cavern is even more dangerous than encountering one on the surface. On the surface, you can often spot a giant from a distance and avoid it. In Blackreach, with its haze and limited sightlines, you might walk around a mushroom cluster and find yourself face to face with a giant. And unlike surface giants, which you can sometimes avoid by staying away from their mammoths, Blackreach giants seem more territorial and aggressive. The automatons, as we've discussed, patrol specific routes and guard certain areas. Learning these patrol patterns can make navigation much safer, but it takes time and observation. And even if you know where automatons usually patrol, they can be unpredictable. A dwarven sphere might roll past you harmlessly if you're not on its designated route, or it might detect you and attack if you venture too close to whatever it's guarding. Certain areas of Blackreach are significantly more dangerous than others. The approaches to the Silent City, for example, are heavily populated with Falmer. The areas near the Great Lifts tend to have numerous automatons on patrol. The deeper sections of the cavern, those furthest from the main entrances, often have the most powerful enemies and the most valuable loot, but reaching them requires passing through everything else first. There are also environmental hazards to consider. Blackreach has areas of extreme height, platforms and bridges that cross chasms hundreds of feet deep. Falling from these heights is inevitably fatal, and the narrow bridges mean combat, while crossing them is incredibly dangerous. Some platforms can only be reached by careful jumping or by finding specific ramps, and missing a jump can send you plummeting into darkness. The lack of fast travel within Blackreach creates another challenge. On the surface, if you need to cross the map, you can fast travel to a location near your destination. In Blackreach, you have to walk or run the entire distance, and with the size of the cavern, getting from one side to the other can take a significant amount of real time. This means you need to manage your resources carefully, carry enough healing potions and other supplies to last for extended expeditions. But despite all these challenges, or perhaps because of them, exploring Blackreach can be incredibly rewarding. This is a place that rewards careful observation and methodical exploration. If you take the time to map out the cavern in your mind, to learn the major landmarks and the routes between them, Blackreach becomes much more manageable. The Farm Overseer's House is one such landmark. This Dwemer structure stands relatively intact, with multiple levels and a distinctive architecture that makes it easy to spot. It's often used as a reference point. Head northeast from the Farm Overseer's House, or the Silent City is southwest of the Farm Overseer's House. Learning these landmarks and how they relate to each other is key to successful navigation. The Reeking Tower is another useful landmark, a tall Dwemer structure that can be seen from many points in the cavern. Despite its somewhat ominous name, it's relatively safe to approach and can serve as an excellent vantage point for surveying the surrounding area. From its upper levels, you can often spot other landmarks and plan your route accordingly. The derelict pump house near the Great Lift at Raldbthar is a partially flooded structure that contains crimson nirnroot and often has chorus lurking in its waters. It's a memorable location both for its visual distinctiveness and for the challenges it presents, making it another useful navigation point. War Quarters is a large Dwemer complex with an arena-like structure at its center. This is one of the more intact sections of Dwemer architecture in Blackreach, with multiple levels and numerous chambers to explore. It's located roughly in the center of the cavern, making it a natural hub for exploration. From the War Quarters, multiple routes lead to different areas of Blackreach. Silent Ruin, despite its name, is often far from silent, as it's usually occupied by Falmer. But it's a distinctive structure with a unique architecture that stands out from other Dwemer buildings. It's also where you can find some of the crimson nirnroot needed for Sindarian's quest, making it a place many adventurers visit multiple times. The bridges are perhaps the most dramatic landmarks in Blackreach. Several massive Dwemer bridges span the cavern, connecting elevated platforms or crossing over the main river. These bridges are engineering marvels constructed from that distinctive Dwemer metal and stone, somehow remaining stable after thousands of years with no maintenance beyond what the automatons might provide. Walking across these bridges, looking down at the cavern, floor far below or up at the glowing ceiling above, gives you a sense of the true scale of Blackreach. For those willing to invest the time, creating a mental map of Blackreach is possible and extremely valuable. Start at one of the great lifts and methodically explore outward, noting landmarks and their relationships to each other. Mark where you find geode veins, crimson nirnroot clusters, or particularly dangerous areas. Over time, the seemingly chaotic layout begins to make sense, and you develop an intuition for how to navigate the cavern. One technique experienced explorers use is following the water. The main river flows through Blackreach in a generally consistent direction, and following it either upstream or downstream can help you maintain orientation. The river passes by or near many of the significant locations in the cavern, making it a natural navigation aid. Another technique is to use the great lifts as reference points. Once you've activated all three lifts, you can orient yourself by knowing which lift you're closest to. Alefand is generally to the north, Msinchalef to the northwest, and Raldabthar to the east. The Tower of Mzark is in the northeastern section of the cavern. Keeping these cardinal directions in mind helps prevent the complete disorientation that many first-time visitors experience. The time of day on the surface doesn't affect Blackreach, obviously, since no sunlight reaches the depths. But your character still gets fatigued if you don't rest, and managing this fatigue during long expeditions is important. Finding relatively safe places to rest in Blackreach can be challenging. The best options are usually elevated platforms that can only be accessed by specific routes, giving you warning if enemies approach. Never rest on the ground floor near Falmer camps or automaton patrol routes. Some adventurers establish supply caches in Blackreach, leaving supplies at strategic locations for later retrieval. Sindarian's field laboratory is a popular choice since it has workbenches and is relatively isolated from Falmer settlements. The upper levels of some of the taller Dwemer structures also work well, as few enemies venture that high. The acoustics of Blackreach can also aid navigation. The sound of the main river is audible from large portions of the cavern, providing an audio reference point. The mechanical sounds of Dwemer machinery vary by location, with some areas having more active mechanisms than others. And the chiming of crimson nirnroot, while subtle, can guide you to those valuable plants if you listen carefully. Weather is not a factor in Blackreach in the traditional sense. There's no rain, snow, or wind beyond the constant air circulation. But there are areas where steam vents make the air hotter and more humid, sections where the temperature drops noticeably, and zones where the haze is thicker or thinner. These environmental variations can help you determine where you are in the cavern if you're familiar enough with them. The passage of time in Blackreach feels different from the surface. Without the sun to mark the hours, without the rhythm of day and night, time becomes fluid. You might think you've only been exploring for an hour when several have actually passed. This temporal distortion is partly psychological, the result of being in a space so removed from normal references, and partly practical, the result of how long it actually takes to traverse significant distances in the cavern. For completionist explorers, those who want to see every corner of Blackreach and collect every piece of loot, the cavern represents a massive time investment. There are dozens of Dwemer chests to loot, 36 geode veins to mine, 44 crimson nirnroot plants to harvest, and countless other resources scattered throughout. A thorough exploration of everything Blackreach has to offer could easily take 10 or 20 hours of real-world time. But even casual visitors, those who enter just to reach the Tower of Mzark or complete a specific quest, can't help but be impressed by the scale and complexity of Blackreach. It's a place that rewards exploration but doesn't require it. You can rush through to your objective if you want, fighting only the enemies directly in your path. Or you can take your time, soaking in the atmosphere, discovering hidden areas and forgotten treasures. The sense of discovery in Blackreach never quite fades. Even after multiple visits, you might find a passage you missed before, leading to a section of the cavern you'd never explored. You might spot a geode vein from a different angle and realize there's a whole cluster of them you'd overlooked. You might stumble upon a small Dwemer structure tucked away in a corner, easy to miss but containing interesting loot or lore. This element of the unknown, the sense that Blackreach has secrets still waiting to be discovered, is part of what makes exploration so compelling. You're not just navigating a large cave system. You're exploring the remains of a civilization that valued secrets, that built hidden passages and concealed mechanisms, that created layers of complexity in everything they did. Every door you open might lead to a simple storage room or to something extraordinary. The psychological impact of exploring Blackreach shouldn't be underestimated either. The constant awareness of danger, the need for vigilance, the sense of being somewhere you don't belong, all of this creates a tension that can be exhausting. But it also creates a sense of accomplishment when you successfully navigate difficult areas or survive encounters with powerful enemies. Blackreach is a place that challenges you, that tests your skills and your persistence, and overcoming those challenges feels meaningful in a way that rushing through a simple dungeon does not. The living darkness, creatures beyond Falmer and Chorus. While the Falmer and Chorus are the most common hostile, inhabitants of Blackreach, they're far from the only creatures you might encounter in the depths. The ecology of Blackreach is more diverse than it initially appears, with various species that have adapted to this unique environment in fascinating and sometimes terrifying ways. The giants of Blackreach are perhaps the most surprising inhabitants. These massive creatures, standing twice the height of a man and possessing strength enough to launch enemies into the air with a single blow, seem completely out of place in an underground environment. On the surface, giants are pastoral creatures, herding mammoths across the tundra, living in crude camps but generally keeping to themselves unless provoked. The Blackreach giants have no mammoths to herd, no wide-open spaces to roam. Instead, they wander through the cavern, apparently feeding on the giant mushrooms and whatever else they can find. They're more aggressive than their surface cousins, perhaps because the confined spaces of the cavern bring them into more frequent contact with potential threats. Encountering a giant in Blackreach, especially in one of the narrower passages where you can't easily keep your distance, is one of the most dangerous situations the cavern can present. The question of how giants came to live in Blackreach is one that scholars debate. Did they wander in through some connection to the surface and find themselves unable or unwilling to leave? Were they brought here deliberately by the Dwemer for some purpose? Or have they always been here, a population of giants that adapted to underground life long before the Dwemer arrived? The third option seems unlikely, given giants' generally surface-dwelling nature, but Blackreach has a way of defying expectations. Frostbite spiders are another common enemy, though less surprising given that spiders often live in caves. The Blackreach specimens are larger than average, having grown to impressive size in an environment where they face little competition for prey. They build webs in corners and alcoves, particularly in areas with less traffic from Falmer or automatons. The webs themselves are barely visible in the dim light, which means you often don't realize you've walked into one until you're stuck and the spider emerges to attack. These spiders are well adapted to the darkness. Torars, using vibrations in their webs to detect prey even more effectively than sight would allow. Their venom is particularly potent, possibly a result of feeding on the unique fauna of Blackreach. A bite from a large frostbite spider can slow your movement significantly, leaving you vulnerable to follow-up attacks from the spider itself or from other creatures that might be nearby. Wisp mothers occasionally appear in Blackreach, though they're less common than in some surface areas. These spectral creatures of ice and magic drift through certain sections of the cavern, particularly in areas near water or in the more remote corners where few other creatures venture. Their presence raises interesting questions about the nature of Blackreach. Wisp mothers are associated with death and cold places, but they're usually found outdoors. What draws them to Blackreach specifically? Some scholars speculate that wisp mothers are attracted to places where the boundary between worlds is thin, areas where the material and spiritual planes overlap. If this is true, it suggests that Blackreach has unusual metaphysical properties, which would align with other observations about the cavern. The soul gem formations, the strange acoustics, the sense that reality works slightly differently here than on the surface. Wisp mothers in Blackreach behave similarly to their surface counterparts, surrounding themselves with wisps, spectral lights that serve as both defensive shields and offensive weapons. They cast powerful ice magic, creating storms of frost that can quickly drain your health and stamina. Fighting a wisp mother in Blackreach is complicated by the environment. The glowing mushrooms and the wisp mother's own glowing wisps create a confusing visual landscape, making it hard to track the wisp mother's movements or to distinguish her attacks from the ambient light. The most disturbing creatures in Blackreach aren't the large, obvious threats, but the smaller ones that infest certain areas. Skeevers are present in the ruins connecting to Blackreach, and presumably they venture into the cavern itself, though they're less commonly encountered there. These rat-like creatures are more of a nuisance than a serious threat individually, but they often attack in groups and can carry diseases. Chorus, while we've discussed them primarily in terms of their relationship with the Falmer, are dangerous creatures in their own right. Wild Chorus, those not managed by the Falmer, are more aggressive and unpredictable. They burrow through softer ground and erupt beneath unwary travelers. Their chitinous armor is tough enough to deflect glancing blows from weapons, and their mandibles can bite with crushing force. But it's the Chorus's poison that makes them truly dangerous. The venom is delivered through specialized organs and causes rapid necrosis at the injection site, along with systemic effects that weaken the entire body. Alchemists prize Chorus eggs not despite this toxicity, but because of it, as the eggs contain components that can be refined into powerful poisons. But harvesting these eggs from Chorus breeding grounds is extraordinarily dangerous, which is why they're so valuable. Less common, but equally dangerous, are the Chorus hunters and reapers, specialized variants that the Falmer have bred. Hunters are faster and more aggressive, with enhanced sensory capabilities that make them particularly effective at tracking prey. Reapers are heavily armored combat variants, bred specifically for their toughness and killing power. Encountering these specialized Chorus usually means you're near a major Falmer settlement, as they're too valuable to waste on random patrols. There are also rumors, unconfirmed but persistent, of other creatures living in the deepest, most unexplored sections of Blackreach. Adventurers speak of strange sounds echoing from passages too dangerous or too remote to explore fully. Some claim to have seen movement in the darkness that didn't match any known creature. Others report finding the remains of animals that don't exist anywhere else in Skyrim, creatures that might have been brought here by the Dwemer for study, or that might have evolved in isolation. One particularly disturbing account comes from an explorer who claimed to have encountered what she described as corrupted trolls in a remote section of the cavern. These creatures, if they exist, would be frost trolls that somehow made their way into Blackreach and adapted to the environment. The explorer's description suggested they were blind like the Falmer, but possessed the troll's characteristic regenerative abilities, making them incredibly difficult to kill. Whether this account is accurate or the result of exhaustion and fear is unclear. The interaction between different species in Blackreach creates a complex ecosystem. Falmer hunt the spiders and any surface creatures they can catch. Chorus are both predators and prey, depending on whether they're wild or managed by the Falmer. Giants seem to be apex predators, unchallenged by anything except well-armed adventurers. The wisp mothers appear to exist outside the normal predator-prey relationships, neither hunting for food nor being hunted. The Dwemer automatons occupy a unique position in this ecosystem. They're not alive in any biological sense, so they're not part of the food web. But they're very much part of the environment, affecting how other creatures behave and move through the cavern. Falmer learn to avoid areas with heavy automaton patrols. Wild chorus don't burrow in sections where automatons regularly pass. Even the giants seem to respect the machines, keeping their distance from active automaton corridors. This creates zones within Blackreach where different types of creatures dominate. There are Falmer-controlled areas, sections of the cavern where they're the primary threat, and where other creatures are rare. There are automaton-controlled areas, corridors, and chambers where the machines patrol constantly, and where few organic creatures dare to venture. And there are wild areas, sections where no single species dominates, and where you might encounter any combination of threats. Understanding these zones and how to navigate between them is key to successful exploration. The most dangerous areas are often the transition zones, places where Falmer territory meets automaton territory, or where wild creatures might encounter either. These are unpredictable spaces where you might face multiple types of enemies simultaneously, and where the enemies themselves might be distracted by fighting each other. One of the strangest aspects of Blackreach's ecology is how it sustains itself. With no sunlight, there's no photosynthesis in the traditional sense. The giant mushrooms and other plants must derive their energy from some other source, possibly the minerals in the rock, possibly geothermal energy from deep beneath the cavern, possibly from that mysterious glow that illuminates the ceiling. This energy flows up through the food web. The mushrooms support herbivores like the giants, which in turn could potentially feed carnivores, though there's no evidence of that happening. The Falmer complicate this ecosystem by hunting intelligently and by managing their chorus herds. They're not just predators, they're farmers of a sort, cultivating their food sources. This means they have a vested interest in maintaining certain areas of the cavern in good condition, which might explain why some sections seem better maintained than others. The Falmer might not understand Dwemer technology, but they understand that clean water and healthy mushroom growth mean healthy chorus and abundant food. There's also the matter of what the creatures of Blackreach drink. Water is abundant, flowing through the rivers and collecting in pools. But is it safe? The teal color suggests mineral content or possibly biological contamination. Yet the creatures here seem to thrive on it. Either they've adapted to water quality that would sicken surface dwellers, or the water is actually safe despite its strange appearance. Most adventurers don't risk drinking from Blackreach's streams, preferring to bring their own water or rely on potions. But in a survival situation, you might not have a choice. The creatures of Blackreach are, in many ways, the clearest example of how life adapts to even the most extreme environments. Thousands of feet underground, in near total darkness, with limited resources and constant threats, life persists. It changes, it adapts, it finds ways to survive that would seem impossible from a surface perspective. And in surviving, these creatures make Blackreach more than just a geological feature or a Dwemer ruin. They make it a living place, a functioning ecosystem, a world unto itself, and that world is waiting in the darkness, ready to challenge anyone who dares to explore its depths. Conclusion. The depths remember, and so we return to where we started, standing at the threshold, looking out over this vast underground world, trying to comprehend what we're seeing. Blackreach is many things to many people. To the Dwemer, it was a highway and a workshop. To the Snow Elves, it was a refuge that became a prison. To the Falmer, it's home. To adventurers, it's a treasure trove and a death trap. To scholars, it's a source of endless questions and precious few answers. But perhaps most fundamentally, Blackreach is a reminder. It reminds us that beneath the world we know, beneath the cities and the roads and the farms, there are layers of history we've forgotten or never knew. It reminds us that civilizations rise and fall, that what seems permanent can vanish in an instant, that knowledge can be lost and then found again thousands of years later. It reminds us that the world is deeper, stranger, and more ancient than we usually consider. We walk on the surface and think we understand what's beneath our feet. But below us are caverns vast enough to hold cities, creatures that have never seen the sun, machines that continue their tasks with no one to remember why those tasks mattered. The hum you hear in Blackreach isn't just machinery. It's the sound of time itself, of ages upon ages compressed into a single continuous note. The glow of the mushrooms isn't just bioluminescence. It's the light of persistence, of life finding a way to survive in conditions that should be fatal. The rushing of the water isn't just a river, it's the flow of history, carrying away the old to make room for the new. When you stand in the silent city and look up at that false sun, when you ring it and hear Volthurial's answering roar, when you harvest crimson nirnroot by the light of glowing fungi, when you watch Falmer scuttle through halls their ancestors built as slaves, you're witnessing something rare, a moment where past and present collide, where the forgotten and the immediate exist side by side. Blackreach will outlast all of us, just as it outlasted the Dwemer, just as it will likely outlast the Falmer and whatever comes after. The machines will keep running, the mushrooms will keep glowing, the water will keep flowing. And thousands of years from now, when our own civilization has become nothing but bones and legends, some future explorer will descend into Blackreach and wonder, as we wonder now, at the people who built these impossible things. The depths remember. They remember the Dwemer's pride and fall. They remember the Snow Elves' transformation into Falmer. They remember the Aetherium Wars and the Dragon War, and every small tragedy that's played out in these lightless halls. And they'll remember us too eventually, when we become part of the history we're currently living. So the next time you're in Skyrim, the next time you're facing a particularly tough choice about whether to delve into Alftand or Mzinchileft or Raldabthar, remember what awaits you in the depths. Remember that you're not just going into a dungeon. You're descending into history itself, into a place where time moves differently, where the past is still present, and where every stone has a story to tell if you're patient enough to listen. Blackreach is waiting. It's always waiting. And like the dragonborn before you, you'll descend into its depths, navigate its dangers, and emerge changed by what you've witnessed. Because that's what Blackreach does. It changes those who experience it, forces them to confront questions about civilization and permanence, about what matters and what endures. The Dwemer thought they could build forever. The Snow Elves thought they'd found refuge. The Aetherium Seekers thought they'd found power. They were all wrong and all right in ways they couldn't have predicted. And so too are we, standing at the edge of understanding, peering into depths that reflect both our achievements and our failures. Welcome to Blackreach, Faljardim Dien, the blackest kingdom reaches, where the stone remembers, where the darkness glows, and where history waits patiently to teach its lessons to anyone brave enough or foolish enough to listen. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Blackreach's lore, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more Elder Scrolls lore content. The world of Tamriel is full of mysteries, and we're just getting started uncovering them. Until next time, safe travels and watch your step in the depths. The machines are still humming.